Hey Viewrander listener, it's me, Greg Miller. And at the start of this podcast, I say there's gonna be some Gone Home spoilers. And then I don't spoil Gone Home for an hour and 15 minutes. So no matter what, you can listen to this for an hour and 15. What's up everybody, I'm Greg Miller, this is Portillo, and this is Steve Gaynor.
Hey Greg.
From the Fullbright company. Hey, how are you?
Pretty
Sorry,
good.
I wasn't, you threw me with the hey, I was just...
I'm engaged in this conversation.
Oh, I was gonna say, no, you're married.
I'm
met your wife.
Married,
Yeah, okay.
Polygamy not...
I was gonna say, is that something that's going on in Portland?
Not legal in Oregon.
Yet. We will win that fight as well.
I mean, we got weed.
Yeah,
weed, you know.
Congratulations.
It's one more step from there to polygamy, right?
I guess they're kind of in the same boat, I guess. Looked down upon some places, other places not looked down upon.
That's right.
Everybody does it in the privacy of their own home. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the kind of funny Gone Home cast. That's right, an entire podcast here about Gone Home. Why are we talking about this ancient, old as hell game? I'll tell you why. Because it's out on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One this very week. We're posting this the Tuesday, the 12th of January, when it comes out to PlayStation 4, if the PSN's working. And then it'll be on Xbox One the next day, the 13th. So we've come in here. I would say, you and I, we're friends.
Yeah.
We haven't talked about what we're going to talk about on this podcast.
I can't guarantee that, but I can't read your mind either. We're not that good at friends.
I would assume that if you haven't ever beaten Gone Home, put this one aside until you go beat Gone Home.
Yes.
And I'm gonna. This is not from him, because again, it's Steve. I can insult him. I can do whatever I want to him. I don't care. I can rough him up. I'm telling you, if you've never played Gone Home, to go play Gone Home. So pause the podcast, stop the podcast. Go buy it on your PlayStation 4, Xbox One. And I think it a long time ago came to a PC.
Yeah, PC near you. PC,
And
Mac,
like,
Linux, we got that.
As you all out there know, PC is hard. When PC jumps the generation, sometimes the games don't work on the other ones. So maybe it's working. I don't know.
If it's backwards compatible on your MacBook.
Oh wow. Okay.
Then, you know.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So this is your chance to get out of there. The way I see this one going, Steve, is I want to talk about Gone Home, but I want to talk about your life before Gone Home, leading up to Gone Home, after Gone Home, everything there. Yeah. So we're gonna talk about Gone Home. But what I want to know right now is,
but in the context of a life.
In context of your life, I want to know. Where does it start for you? Like when do you know you are going to make video games?
That's a really good question. That's more of the before than I was expecting.
Oh, where do you think I was going to be?
I don't know.
BioShock 2-ish?
Yeah, maybe right before that. But no, I like this.
Okay.
I like this.
Sure. I don't want to do one of these bullshit podcasts you've been doing all week.
This is why I'm here.
Ryan McCaffrey's like, well, how is I going to play with an Xbox controller? You're like, all right, get out of here.
No, I'm here to tell Greg Miller about my childhood. This is what we're here for.
Show me on the Portillo where they touched you.
Right on the snoot. I grew up. I was really lucky growing up with games because I kind of walked the line between PC gaming and console gaming just all throughout my youth. Like when I grew up, there was a Commodore 64 computer in my house before I could remember. Right, so like I grew up playing like Sesame Street games and like a Godzilla game and stuff like on my Commodore 64 when I was like. Right, like it's. I don't remember before I had.
So is that because of a Big Brother Big Sis, or your parents were into games?
I'm an only child, so my dad, was a guy that thought it was important to have a computer in the house. Okay. Yeah, it was the early '80s. It was kind of like kids gonna have to know how to use a computer.
Yeah, that's still ahead of the future. Though I remember like in the early '90s, my parents finally getting a computer. Yeah. It was a knockoff Windows machine that had knockoff Windows and couldn't run anything, and I'd cry because I couldn't make Carmen Sandiego. Oh yeah, of course there was. Wow. Oh my god, this thing was terrible. I don't know what the hell it was doing. But they were into consoles, so I understood consoles from early thing.
Yeah. So I grew up playing kids games on Commodore 64, but also I had a next door neighbor who was a few years older than me, and he was kind of like my nerd Sherpa.
Sure.
Like he was he was just like a very like archetypal 80s nerd. Just into like he had the Star Wars bed sheets, literally. And this, this is after the original. Sure. This wasn't this new.
No.
Everybody's wearing Star Wars t-shirts now.
Yeah, you don't remember what it was like for us growing up when there were no Star Wars stuff, Kevin.
But like and he like, I don't know, Monty Python and Dungeons and Dragons.
Sure.
Like,
Oh wow. Wow. He's really bringing you into the nerd
he was
fold.
doing all of it. And so like he had an NES, before anybody else I knew. And I went over to his house, the next door neighbor's house, and played Nintendo. You know, and like my grandmother was generous enough to buy me a subscription to Nintendo Power every year for Christmas or whatever. So I had like,
Nice.
Nintendo Power coming to my house every day, every day. I had a daily
awesome.
subscription. No, every month. And so I was really lucky when I was growing up. I was in the Midwest and
Where in the Midwest?
Missouri, like west of St. Louis. So.
Oh, wow, okay. How close are we get, or where are we at? We're not to Kingdom City yet, are we? No. Are
It's
we?
like Ellisville, Missouri.
Okay.
Yeah, like
And that's it goes
like Chesterfield, Missouri.
Right. Where? Give me Wentzville as my location there.
So I moved away from Missouri. My family moved. I struck out on my own.
I
when
escaped Missouri.
when I was 9 years old. No,
Yeah.
my family moved away from Missouri when I was still in grade school. So I don't really know.
Okay.
I don't remember a lot
I
about.
thought we were gonna bond a little bit over our
sorry.
Missouri knowledge there.
Were you
excited?
Were you a Missouri kid?
No. I mean, where do you think I went to the college here?
Why
Look
do
at
you-
this. Look at this things, huh?
Oh,
Best journalism in school in the country, ladies and gentlemen. That's where the good questions from. Got the journalism degree. Didn't get the racism.
Win-win.
Yeah, I got out before it got bad.
But so I when I was growing up, we lived in this little subdivision.
Yeah.
That I was a kid growing up, and our house is in the subdivision. Like one direction, like 10 minutes down the street was the elementary school I went to. I could walk to that. The other side of it, there was this little strip mall that had a video store in it and a bank and whatever. And they actually kept a good stock of NES games in their rental section. And so like I had this perfect setup of being a kid where it's like you get Nintendo Power magazine, they say this game's actually supposed to be good, and like Nintendo Power then, I mean, it's not around anymore.
Yeah.
I only read it when I was that age, but like I remember when I was a kid, I think back to it and I'm impressed because like they really did highlight games that were good, regardless of whether they were Nintendo first party or like, and so there'd be a game that was supposed to be cool, and I could just like walk down to the video store and pay $1 to rent it for 2 nights or whatever.
Yeah.
So, I was really lucky to grow up being able to actually like play a lot of stuff and on different platforms. So just as I was growing up, I kind of went back and forth between being like, I went from SNES to then mostly being like a PC gaming kid in like the early 90s. But then I got back on board for the PS1.
Yeah, you did.
I rented a PS1 from Blockbuster for my 15th or no, probably 14th birthday.
Yeah.
Brought it home with a copy of Resident Evil 1.
Oh, wow.
And a copy of Loaded.
Oh, well, I know which one you played more of. Loaded, of course.
It was extreme. Let's be honest here. So I was lucky to basically, because I had a similar situation with like PC Gamer magazine.
Sure.
Like around that time when I got back into PC gaming, had a computer. My family had a computer at the house still, and I remember I was in like a Barnes and Noble or something. I saw a PC Gamer on the racks, and I was like, I play computer games.
I know PCs, yeah.
I was like, let's see what's up. And so I remember I picked up an issue, and they're like game of the month. They gave like a 94 or whatever. Was Crusader No Remorse, which was an Origin like isometric shooter game. And I was like, okay, this sounds cool. They really liked it. I'm gonna get this game, and if I agree that they were right, then that means this magazine's probably pretty good. I should keep it. So and I love that game, and I still love that game. So then like PC Gamer was kind of my Nintendo Power for PC gaming from that point forward. Like this game's awesome. You should check it out. So. I'm grateful to like the editors of those publications for helping me actually find
you ever found
good
them? Have you talked to them?
games.
Because obviously you've been in PC Gamer nowadays.
From that time I have met like Gary Whitta.
Oh yeah. Sorry, that's the one you had to meet. I still have a spotted
That's
dick
Greg.
out there.
That's not me. That's Greg.
I'm speaking on behalf of everybody. Let's just say Abomination isn't used just to describe his books.
Are you saying
He's an abomination.
His movies?
He's only no. I just meant him.
Okay.
I was trying to turn his book Abomination on him.
Well, but he also wrote some screenplays, so you could.
Those
like,
are
be a
really
dick
good
about
though.
those.
Book of Eli, come on now.
Okay.
I'm not gonna argue about that.
But I mean, I'm just trying to help you.
Gary
be
Whitta,
mean to him.
friend of the show, everything else. Like I said, Kevin could go out right now and get his spotted dick if you wanted. It's in the Lazy. Go get the spotted dick. Go get Gary Whitta's spotted dick. It's out. It's out in the Lazy Susan. We'll put it right here next to your game.
Yeah, give us a second. I'll show you Gary Whitta's spotted dick.
Give us
Thank
2
you.
seconds and we'll show you Gary Whitta's spotted dick.
So anyway, yeah.
So, but here's you're going, and your story sounds just like mine, just like a lot of kids out there, I'm sure, just like this spotted dick, straight from England. Porty's licking it. Oh, he lost. Now it's gonna take him about 10 seconds to realize he doesn't have his owl, and he's gonna be very upset. Oh, there it is. See,
I'm just trying to help people get good screenshots.
Oh.
I was making sure that there's something that's screen grabbable.
Well, no, hold on. Yeah, you touch it too. And then
we all.
Then we'll hold for it, and then you can all tweet, "Hey Gary Whitta, Steve and Greg are holding your spotted dick."
All right.
All right, nailed it.
Yeah. So you were saying.
So you have a story that's just like I think me, probably most of our listeners, right?
A lot of yeah. Or if you're younger, you had your website of choice that was telling you here's the shit you should be paying attention to.
Right.
Sure.
So where does it go from being I love this hobby, I love playing games to I want to create these, I want to make games?
I think that so I mean I messed around with making game stuff a little bit, like as I was growing up, just kind of off and on. Like I remember.
But what does that mean? Like, because that's the thing for me. It was like I looked at this stuff and I'm like, man, I want to write the magazine. And you're like, I want to make the games that are in it. You know what I mean? Like,
well, when I was growing up, I always made like comics and I wrote and drew comics, and I did like a lot of illustration and stuff when I was growing up, and so I think I had this idea that I wanted to do something creative. I thought I was like, okay, I'm gonna do like art stuff as a living, and I did that all through high school and everything, and into college, and then at some point when I was in college, I was getting kind of deeper into like alternative comics and stuff like that. Sure. And I was making my own stuff and kind of getting more serious about it. But I just sort of, at some point I had this realization that I was sort of like, I don't have, like as I'm doing this stuff, I don't have like this visceral love of actually like making the stuff, like sitting down at a drawing board for a really long time. It's like hard. And, and you can either be energized by it or it can just beat you down. It's not what you're built for. And also I was kind of getting, familiar with comics creators like Daniel Clowes or Chris Ware or R. Crumb, who like they are deeply obsessed with the medium and its history and everything about it. Like comics are what is inside of them, right? And I was like, I'm also not really that guy. I'm not like, oh, I have to like know everything about the entire history of comics. Like I'm so obsessed with like Charles Schulz's early work, or like that. Yeah. And but at the same time, I had a notebook that I kept with me that I had for writing like story ideas for comics, and I just kind of noticed, I was like, this is just sort of turning into game ideas and like ideas for like game mechanics and like what if you could do this in a game or whatever. And it was around that time that I was like actually, now that I think of it, like games are the medium that I am obsessed with and that has been the kind of entertainment that has connected the most with me throughout my life. So I think back, I'm like, I always want to be playing games. Like I'm thinking about that, like clearly based on like what's coming out of my notebook. Even right now,
you'd rather be playing games.
Not right now.
No, because I'd rather.
Okay, well, okay. And so I just kind of had that realization. I was sort of like, I think myself is trying to tell myself, like, this is what you actually should be involved with if you're going to do something creative, right? And so I kind of thought back to, when I was growing up, I made Duke Nukem 3D levels with the level editor that shipped with Duke Nukem 3D. I made some games in, like, QBasic or whatever, just kind of like off and on. I played with like the Quake 1 level editor, and I just kind of thought back to that, and I was like, I think, from what I understand, if you can make levels for games and you can do it well enough to like have a portfolio, you can get into making games that way. And so like from that kind of realization point, I started taking that seriously and being like, I need to figure out how to build these things and build a portfolio and get it out in front of people and like figure out how to be a part of making this stuff,
So then this comes to you in college.
Yeah.
Do you have the panic near the end of college that you've wasted these years, you've done this wrong, or da-da-da-da-da?
I was just sort of wasting college all the I mean,
okay, as long as you knew you were.
It wasn't the kind of thing where I had gone all the way through college and like I was about to like get my degree in biology or something.
Sure.
Like when I was going through college, it really wasn't a waste in terms of like what I got out of it.
Yeah.
But I was never like, I'm training to be an accountant. I'm getting my like criminal, science degree or something, right? As I was going through college, I took a lot of film courses and I took a lot of art courses, because I was doing visual arts. So I, took a lot of life drawing, and I ended up getting my my degree in sculpture, and my minor was art history. And so like as I was going through what everything I was doing in college, it all added up to exposing me to a lot of context for like making stuff and the history of art and how things are made, and just like I went into kind of around the time that I realized that like drawing and illustration wasn't really what I was gonna end up doing.
Yeah.
I also had to pick my concentration for college, and I was like, I've never done any sculpture, but I'm gonna make sculpture my concentration so that I can learn about working in 3D space.
Smart.
Because when am I going to get to do that again, you know? And I had a professor at Portland State who was really supportive of like, he was like, what do you want to do for, like, you want to go be a sculptor? And I was like, no. He's like, what do you actually want to do? And I was like, well, I want to make video game levels. And I think that, you know, learning how to work in 3D is like applicable to that.
That's part of it for sure.
Yeah, and he was like, well, okay, then your final concentration project for your degree is just like, don't come to any of your classes for a week. Just stay home and just build a level, and see if just like spending the full-time job amount of time like actually doing that
40
work
hours.
Is actually like, if by the end of that you actually liked doing it, because it's that thing that I kind of said about like drawing comics, you kind of realize you're doing the work and you don't actually like the work. And so it's like, if you think this is what you want to do, you should probably go do it and see if you actually like the act of doing it, and then bring me the results of that and explain your process and what you built and everything. And, you know, I did it and I came out of it and I was like, I want to keep doing that.
That's awesome.
So, you know, having supportive people in college, even though it wasn't like a real clear path.
It wasn't the traditional, I'm going to be a sculptor and then into video games.
Right. Yeah. So, yeah, it was a kind of abstract path, regardless of what it ended up at. Yeah. You know? But I'm really glad that I have that background. I'm really glad that I did a bunch of like film history courses and just kind of got that foundation in what people have done, you know, in entertainment and in art, like in this century, just sort of like being able to think back like, oh yeah, like there's this thing that is kind of the, like, you see, you know, because you see a lot of stuff now. You watch a TV show or a movie or whatever.
I do see things a lot.
I know that you're always looking at things. But like, it's just really interesting when you can think back and you're like, oh, that came from, you know, this movie from the 50s or something that maybe I probably never would have watched on my own. You know, having someone to point you towards kind of a starter's guide for, like, here's some stuff that it's good to be aware of, and to give you that insight is really cool. Yeah,
that's a cool mix, because Colin and I were talking about this on last week's PS I Love You XOXO, in the way of one of our listeners wrote in and was asking, you know, he was making the argument, as I think he's 61, that we are currently in the good old days of games, right? The good old days of games weren't when you think they were back in the NES and da-da-da. Yeah. And we sat there and talked about this for a while, and that's what we were talking about is, you know, games being our passion, right? That's what we know about, is why did you grab the spotted dick first? I thought you grabbed your coffee first, but then you grabbed...
I just didn't want to.
You put Gary with a spotted dick on your crotch.
I just didn't want to be off balance. We just both needed something for the lap.
Oh, okay.
I was thinking about composition.
Sure. Do you want? You can have Christmas duck if you want. We can put Christmas duck in your lap.
No, I like the dick.
He's got spotted dick and you have a wiener dog.
Thank you, Kevin. Dynamite dropping. Kev, come in the frame. There it is. There's Kevin already ready for you. That's what I work with every day around here, and I love it. Don't get me wrong.
I'm envious.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We all need a Kevin.
We all do need a Kevin. I'm lucky we got this one. We were talking about the fact that, for us, you know, like, being a video game fan and it being our lives and our passion, right, is the fact that we know that so well. We know how to go back and find all that stuff and know the history of it. Stop watching yourself with a spotted dick. Turn off the monitor.
It's balanced.
Okay, all right. But then, like, that was the thing, is like we both...
Fine, then I'll just put it away. If I can't look at it, I don't want it to be there.
Turn on the spotted dick cam. Jesus.
Were you saying something?
No, it doesn't matter. Just saying that, like, history, we both, Colin and I both like movies, but we can't go back and tell you, like, oh, well, this pulled from this, and this is how Tarantino found this vision. And
Sure, right.
And like that, not that that's a deficiency for us, but in terms of critiquing film or knowing film the way we know games, that's the problem.
Do you feel like you haven't watched a lot of film from before, like, 1980?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah. I think I'm a contemporary. I know contemporary movies decently enough, but even that, like, that's my big thing. Where, you know, Nick out there, right? He's Mr. Movie Guy. He likes writing scripts. He wants to make films and stuff like that still. And I hope we can grow kind of funny to that point so that he can do that here, and I don't have to just fire him one day.
Right.
Yeah. But we'll sit around. He always gets so angry at me because movies will come out, and I'm like, just make them day and date digital. And he's like, no, you have to go, you have to get the experience. And then I end up watching every film he recommends on Virgin America screens on the back of the thing, and he gets even more mad at me, right? But like, yeah, that's the thing is like, there's only so many hours in the day, and I feel like if I'm not, I watch TV and consume inactive entertainment when I'm eating, right? I'm having dinner or something, I want to watch something, and then I'm off to go play something or interact on the internet and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So just differences like that.
Yeah. Have you seen? No, I'm not gonna do that. No, it is cool when you get a hook into older film and you can start to make those connections. There's some stuff. My favorite thing about watching film from the 30s, 40s, 50s is how surprisingly modern some of it is.
Oh yeah.
Because you're just like, whoa, I didn't think people would talk about that. And a lot of it was like based on like, that there was stuff that they couldn't be explicit about in the film, but seeing how they tackle issues and allude to things so they couldn't just say outright.
Exactly.
Really fascinating. Anyway,
that's always my favorite thing is to go back and watch movies I remember watching as a kid that were ahead of my time.
Right.
And then you watch them and you pick up on all these things and like, oh my god, I didn't even like Ghostbusters, right? Like I watched Ghostbusters a million times. As a kid, like I'm freaking out. It's my favorite movie.
You're like, why is Dan Aykroyd's belt coming off?
Exactly. You had no idea this ghost is giving him a blowjob. You're just watching like, and I remember like watching that movie and then having to. Now I'll make it symmetrical again.
Okay, thank you.
Having to go in and ask my mom if I could say words from it.
Right.
Like, can I say Mother Puss Bucket? He's like, yeah, I guess. I'm like, all right, thanks. Because I got in trouble, you see, with Bastard. Me and my dad were playing in the front yard, and I pinned myself up against a tree, and he was trying to find me, and I turned around and I yelled, Bastards! From Back to the Future.
Yeah.
And he's like, stop, can't say that. I'm sorry.
Not a school,
cried.
none of this.
Back to you, though, not my childhood traumas. So, you graduate.
I mean, I can if you want to talk about you crying as a child more. I mean,
Trust me, that's every Game Over Greggy show. There's 110 of them up right now on kindafunny.com for you. You graduate, degree in sculpting. Like, how do you then take the one level you've made and like how do you turn that into a career?
I moved down here. Right after college, I moved down to San Francisco. Actually, we moved down here because my now wife, like we weren't married at the time, but
Living in sin.
Yes. In San Francisco.
This
This is the Sin City? Is this the one or is
is
this
the one. No,
Okay,
this is Sin City, Brotherly Love,
Okay.
Windy City.
Oh, it's the Windy City.
We're everything.
City.
Yeah.
Nice. I love Frisco.
That goes over everyone's head. But everybody hates that.
So we moved down here.
No job, or do you have a job in hand?
I didn't have a job, but we moved down here for my wife's grad school because she was going into her grad school stuff.
What was she going into?
Biomedical sciences.
Okay.
I'm married to a doctor.
Okay, very nice. Now we know how these games are getting made. Who's paying the bills?
Not a medical doctor.
Now we don't know.
We came down here for her grad school stuff, and she made that decision in part because she knew that like there was game stuff here, and that's what I wanted to get into as far as where she decided to go. But we came down here. Yeah, it was a different time in San Francisco. We moved here.
What are we looking at? Year-wise?
2005.
Okay.
So we moved here. We moved into a 2-bedroom apartment with another couple, and it was 2 grad students, somebody that worked at a nonprofit, and an unemployed person.
Wow.
And they rented us an apartment right at the top of Hayes Valley.
Damn.
So very lucky, very nice landlords.
Yeah.
No complaints. And so I got here and I just like started.
Cold call, knock on the door.
I was like, I guess I'm just gonna try to get in as a tester, because I had no marketable skill. Like, I had the beginning of like a level design portfolio, but it's not like somebody was gonna hire me.
Take a chance
for that.
Right.
I needed to keep working on it, But I wanted to be in the industry and doing something that would like apply to a resume.
Yeah.
While I was working on my level design portfolio, And so my first job in the industry was I was a certification tester at Sony in San Mateo.
Yeah.
So. I was a tester on PS2 and PSP games.
Hell yeah, PSP games. Pound it out. Did you play that Patapon? Did you ever play that Patapon?
No, you don't get to choose what you play.
I know, but I'm sure something.
I played
Daxter.
I played the Daxter.
I figured it was Daxter.
Tested the Daxter spin-off game.
Yeah. Hot Shots Golf, Luminous. I'm throwing stuff at you that'll be out there in that time period.
No, it wasn't those. But I did, so... There's actually a lot of interesting stuff about working at Sony at that time.
Lay it on me. I'm sure Shuhei walked in every day, said, "Hey, what's up?"
We were buds.
Yeah,
we were bros. So you generally, you didn't get to choose what you played. So like, it was an interesting, just like interview process. Because like you show up, Like, I want to be a game tester. And they're like, okay, well, let's find out if you can do that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a as noted, you don't have to have a lot of experience. So they're kind of like trying to filter by like, does it seem like you'll actually like be able to like find stuff, right? So the way that at that time they did the job interviews, they talk to you and they're like, what's your background and like, why do you want to take this job and all the normal kind of stuff. But then the test was they had a VHS tape of bugs that testers had recorded, and you had to watch the tape and then tell them what the bug was that was in it. So some of them were really easy, where it would be like, what's the bug? Well, the guy fell through the floor. You know, or whatever, that kind of thing. Like, what's the bug? Oh, that one enemy wasn't animating, or you know, or like that kind of
T-pose or whatever.
Right, and it's like, oh, he's kind of off in the corner of the screen. Maybe you would miss it or whatever. The bug I was most proud of that I got was a clip of a 4-player split screen racing game.
Yeah.
And it shows the go across the finish line, finish, and then it ends. And they're like, what's the bug? And I was like, I think the guy who got first place had a longer time than the guy who got second. And they're like, yeah, that's right. Like, I know, like,
yes.
I was really glad. I was like, I noticed that the second place guy actually had the shortest time. So it was stuff like that. Where they're like, are you going to catch this stuff?
Could you rewatch it, or was it just the one shot? Oh.
It might have been twice.
Okay.
I think it might have been if the first time you were just like, I don't know, can I see it again? I don't remember. But you know, it was something like that. So anyway, I was working there, and they would just give you games, and it was a really good education. Like, it was a really good education in game design, because when we play games as players, as gamers, we are totally self-selecting. You know, we're like, I think I'll like this. I'm going to buy it on purpose. My friend told me this is good. I'm going to try it.
Sure.
At Sony, you know, they were just like, okay, spend 2 weeks doing nothing but playing this. And you're like, well,
but I hate this kind of genre, like, we don't care.
Yeah, they're like, it's not the point, right?
Yeah.
And so like I spent like a week playing like one of the Ice Age tie-in like kids games, you know? I spent like a couple weeks playing Mark Echo's Getting Up, Contents Under Pressure.
Wow.
You know, and the Daxter game, and like a bunch of stuff where it's sort of like, okay, we're just gonna make you not only play a bunch of stuff you wouldn't have gone out and bought yourself, but also become incredibly familiar with it.
Right.
Like, play it for like 80 hours. You know, like, you're on hour 80 of Mark Echo's Getting Up, Contents Under Pressure. Like, that's not even that, you know way more about the game than somebody who just plays it as an end user, right?
Of course.
And so it's really interesting having to play these games and having to really get familiar with them and getting to the point where you understand why they don't work, or why they're okay but not that great. Like, you end up playing a lot of stuff that's sort of like, it's sort of the off-brand of something that you have played intentionally, and you're like, oh, I see why it worked in the version that I decided to play, and what's missing here, and that kind of comparison, or just playing weird. Like, there was a game that I played. There was a PS2 game that it was I don't think it was turn-based. It was just really slow-paced. Like World War II ship combat. It was a Japanese game. It was World War II ship combat, but an alternate World War II where you could upgrade your ships with like plasma cannons and stuff.
Okay, cool. I mean,
and it's just like, okay, so one of the PSP games we played was like one of the Armored Core PSP games. So I have a lot of hours logged of like head-to-head 1v1 Armored Core PSP against other testers. So you know, and it's just like, you just don't have any choice. You just have to like get your head around these games and understand them, and understand how to play them in such a way that you might find weird stuff that players won't normally find, etc.
Well, and that's like what, running different corners that normally would go to, trying to...
Well, that's one of the other interesting things that you learn is like, you start out playing it, you just do a playthrough just to familiarize yourself.
Yeah.
Then you keep playing it, and you keep playing it, and you find some bugs or whatever. And then you're like, all right, how do I even play this more?
Yeah.
And you get bored, and you're just like, and that's when you start doing weird stuff.
Sure.
And that's when you find the bugs. Because you're like, maybe I'll do some weird thing, and then you're like, oh, that's something that people don't normally do. That's
Right.
what hasn't been banged on
I'm
already.
gonna try to play all the way through with only using knives or something goofy like that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
My loadout will only be this kind of thing, or I'll mix in this thing.
Or just like weird stuff like, oh, I guess I'll just try to go all the way back to the beginning of the game. I don't know. You know, and then you're like, oh, when you go backwards through this like load gate, sometimes it crashes, you know, or like whatever, right? So it's been really interesting. It's interesting just to remember that there's like that boredom point is good.
Yeah,
that point of like too much familiarity, because you get to the point where you're just like if you think you've exhausted everything in it, that's the point where you'll actually find the really interesting stuff. And that's useful as a developer too. If you're like, I'm so familiar with my game, there can't be any problems with it, obviously. Keep playing it and you'll find something. And a lot of times when you're a developer, that'll lead to not just like bug fixes or whatever,
Sure.
but it'll lead to you being able to like put something cool in when the player does that weird thing, because you're like, oh, what if I tried this weird thing? Oh yeah, we don't do anything if you do that.
That'd
you
be
put
cool.
something there, that'd be
Right,
cool,
right.
you know, and that's one of those kinds of things that can make a good game great, you know.
So are you taking what you're learning, you're doing all these different things, finding things like that, and you're going home, I'm assuming, then, and making more levels, building out a portfolio that way?
Yeah. My level design portfolio was I made levels for a game called Fear. You remember
I
Fear,
remember
the
Fear.
first-person
Yeah.
shooter? Yeah, it's a Monolith game. I really like that game.
Yeah.
I made levels for it because I was a big fan of it, and it
Sure.
was sort of like, I need to be making levels for something I actually want to play,
So
which
now,
I think is really
real quick for
important.
me and for the listeners and viewers, you're making levels for Fear. You're just making them in your own free time.
Yeah.
As I like this. Are you using Maya? I don't remember. Did Fear have some kind of?
So that was part of why I chose it, because they shipped their entire development
Sweet.
SDK.
Okay. Okay.
So basically, they shipped all the tools so you could make anything in the game that they had
Gotcha.
made, theoretically.
Yeah.
You could do any of the scripting, etc. And I knew that I wanted to make like a story-based, like like a kind of single-player, like narrative-based or narrative like focused kind of game like that, right? And so like Fear released the tools so that you could make a single-player level, put enemies in it, make new like radio messages, and do the story scripted stuff, and make your own version of that kind of experience, which is the kind of thing I wanted to do, So I was like, I'm glad that I did it this way, because like I think even in now you can be very engine driven. You can be like, what's the engine that the most companies are using or whatever.
Sure.
You can be like, I should make a game for Unreal because everybody uses Unreal or whatever. But if you do that to the detriment of actually like making something that you want to play, then it's gonna be really hard for you to make something that like shines
Sure.
as like, oh, somebody really like cared about this and did an awesome job with it, So two things that were good about making levels for Fear was, one, I was a big fan and just wanted to make more of that game, but two, I was making those levels and there was somebody I knew online who worked at this small game studio in Texas that had made an expansion pack for Fear, and they were making another expansion pack for Fear, and they needed a level designer, and he knew that I was making levels for Fear, so he was like, you should apply at this studio that I work at.
And you just drop like 30 levels on them. You're
well,
like, I think it'll be all right, guys.
I mean, the cool thing was, it was like, I never would have thought to apply there otherwise, right? But the fact that I was like making levels in the engine that they were making an expansion pack with, and I could just show up and be like, I made some levels, you don't have to like teach me the tools.
Yeah, good point.
And they're like, cool, we have to ship this thing in 6 months. Jump in, get rolling. I could just like show up, start knocking stuff out. If I had been making levels in Unreal or whatever, that I
Huge
wouldn't have gotten that job,
right, right.
So sometimes doing weird, obscure stuff works out because somebody needs somebody who knows how to do that weird, obscure thing already, right? So that's how I got into my first design job, which was at Timegate Studios down in Sugar Land, Texas.
Did you have to move out there? Or
I
did you
did,
stay
yeah.
inside? Okay.
I lived in Texas for 6 months.
Okay.
Out in a suburb outside of Houston from March until September of 2007.
Never a better time to go to Texas than the sweltering summer.
And I didn't own a car.
God damn it.
My apartment had air conditioning. Kevin
and I can't deal with heat.
No, he's terrified just hearing this.
Yeah.
It was not good to be living in a suburb of Houston with no car in the middle of the
Sure.
summer.
Yeah, what did you do? How did you get to work?
I had very gracious coworkers that would give me a ride. But on the weekends, I either had to just sit around in my apartment or walk to the mall that was 10 minutes away. Yeah. So I was being killed. But yeah, so I lived there for 6 months. We shipped that expansion expansion pork.
Yeah. It's getting worse. I spiked your coffee when you weren't looking. Cool.
Ship that expansion pack, the Perseus Mandate, and move back to San Francisco.
Okay. And so then what was the next step? You have experience now. You have a credit.
That
They're
was
beating down your door now to work with you, right?
yeah. You seen the Metacritic for Perseus Mandate?
But every review is like the level design's cool.
There was that one there. So the stuff that I did, that was a cool thing about it. So the stuff I did on that project was, I came on late. They already built like the campaign, but they had these instant action maps that were like you just jump in and they were more like arena
shoot stuff.
Arena based or like time trial based or whatever. So I made a couple of those instant action maps, and then my other job was at some point they just had me do a pass through the single player campaign and basically do like a scare pass. Like there weren't enough scary scripted things in it, so they were just like play through the campaign, find places where you could put some kind of crazy, scary like ghost scripted moment in, pitch them, put them in, right? So like I didn't get to build a level in the single player campaign,
right?
But I kind of got to do the two sides of it. Like I built a couple of levels that were just purely like gameplay, mechanics, replayability, and then also do a bunch of like scripted stuff in the single player experience. So it was a really good kind of like 6-month crash course in just like making geo, making gameplay, making scripted stuff. And so I worked remotely for them for a little while, and then at GDC in 2008, I started talking to the folks at 2K Marin,
right?
Because they were starting that up to make BioShock 2.
And they're like, wait, you're the guy who did the Fear DLC. Get over there! Get over there! Get Ken on the phone! Get all these people!
Expansion packs!
So that leads you to 2K Marin, which is thankfully close here. So you didn't have to leave your wife this time.
Right.
You're
Yes.
able to see her on a daily basis.
Yes.
But you go up to 2K, and what are they initially? What are you going up there to work on BioShock 2, and that's the deal? That's the whole thing?
Yeah.
And like what's your title, I guess?
Level designer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Basically, I shipped Perseus Mandate. I was working on kind of like a project they were trying to get greenlit at Timegate, and
was it a DC Comics game? I don't care about it. Was it a new IP?
Is that why you love Gone Home so much? Because it's just got Supergirls
It reminds
all
me a
over
lot
it?
of things. There's a lot of things that pull out. I'm like, this could be happening in the DCU. We don't know.
I mean, yeah, Batman could be on the roof. What? I started talking to them at GDC that year, and it was a good time for them to take a chance on somebody. You know what I mean? Because like it was really early in the development of BioShock 2, like super early, and they could bring somebody on who didn't have a ton of experience.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I had been writing my like game design blog for years. It was called Fullbright. My game design blog is called Fullbright. It's still online. I maintained it from like 2005 to 2010, I guess. I had been getting like some articles from it republished on like game industry websites and stuff because editors at like Gamasutra had noticed it and republished some of it, and so like I was kind of gaining a little bit of visibility from that, and so I had the advantage of some of the people at 2K Marin were like familiar with my writing stuff, that they had read some of the articles I had written, and so I came up to them, and they at least had heard of me before we started talking, and I could be like, I'm a level designer, I shipped these levels, here's some video of it. Also, you guys kind of know what my like design thought process is. And so it was a really good time for them to be like, well, this guy shipped one expansion pack. He's not like, a 10-year veteran of the industry or anything, but, we like how he thinks. We're interested in what he would do. He has some practical experience. We're right at the beginning of the project. He can learn a lot about how to implement stuff like over the course of dev. Yeah, I would not have been hired in the last 6 months of that project, but I was hired in like the first 6 months. Our other level designer at Fullbright now working on Tacoma is Tynan Wales, and he and I were the first two level designers that they hired on BioShock 2. He started the same week as me, and he had never worked on first-person games at all. He was like an indie game developer from like before indie games were really a thing. He he won an IGF award in like 2004.
Okay.
You know, it was like, you know, kind of like pre-Braid, pre-World
Sure.
of Goo, et
Sure,
cetera.
sure.
But he had worked with Mark LeBlanc and other people that were like ex-Looking Glass, you know, like people that had gone on to make their own small studio. So he kind of like had that connection to that kind of way of thinking about design, and he had made his own games and stuff like that. So similarly, they're kind of like, well, you've never been an FPS designer before, but you make cool stuff. You have an interesting background. We think that we connect with your outlook. We're going to give you a chance on this, right? So
are you guys shitting bricks? You talk to him, and he's like, I've made it a game. I don't really know what I'm doing either. And you're like, oh, it's okay. We're just working on BioShock 2, the follow-up to this game that everyone lost their mind for. And guess what? We're not the guys who made that game.
That was the thing. Like, I mean, I almost didn't even consider applying for that job.
Yeah.
You know, like I knew people in the industry. Like, so, you know, Greg Kasavin, who now works at Supergiant.
Yeah.
And was the writer of Bastion and Transistor.
We're going to talk about Transistor, just Bastion. PlayStation Vita's best game. No, I'm just a huge Bastion fan.
Okay, yeah, I mean, as am I.
Yeah.
But I'm not a hater.
Oh, I'm not a hater either. It's just, I had, for like literally for 4 years, every time I saw him, I had to be like, when's it coming to PlayStation? It finally came to PlayStation. Like,
Right.
When's it coming to Vita? Or, you know what I mean? We were just finally on speaking terms again, me and Greg.
Yeah, well, we'll get there.
Yeah.
And so he was still at, no, he wasn't at GameStop or GameSpot, sorry.
I do it all the time too.
He wasn't still at GameSpot, but I knew him from when he had
Sure.
been at GameSpot, and we kind of had like emailed each other and
Sure.
stuff like that. And he was working in the industry at that point, like as a producer / designer, and he had been talking to the 2K Marin guys at some point, and I met him in person for the first time at GDC that year.
Yeah.
And he really encouraged me. He was like, "Hey, are you like thinking of trying to find something in town? Because I really think that you'd be a good match for 2K Marin." I was like, "They made BioShock. Like I shipped an expansion. I shipped like the second expansion pack for a good game.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
but it's like, and like, why would they want to talk to me?
Sure,
You know what I mean?
sure.
I was like, they made BioShock. Why would they want to talk to me? He was like, you should at least just go talk to them, right? And then like Chris Remo, who ended up doing the music for Gone Home, and he's doing the music for Firewatch. And
Good dude.
And founder of Idle Thumbs.
Never heard of
It's a good podcast.
Okay.
It's kind of funny.
Don't do that. That's when my lawyer, Kevin Coelho, gets involved.
Give me the straight face. Thank you. So he was still in journalism at the time. He was working at Shack News.
Yeah.
And he had an appointment at the 2K booth to interview Ken Levine. And he was like, "Oh, I'm going to the 2K booth. Like, you should just come with me." I was like, "Okay." And so I went over there, and some of the 2K Marine guys were there, and I just started talking to them.
Nice.
And I was like, "Hey, you know, I'm Steve." And they were like, "Oh, Steve, you wrote that article?" You know, I'm like,
Yeah,
"Oh, okay, yeah." And so I was thinking the same thing, right?
Yeah.
But like people that I knew basically were like, "Dude, just talk to him."
Yeah.
Maybe, right?
What's the worst that can happen?
Yeah, exactly. And so, you know, I had one of the most stressful weeks of my life when like I went in. No, I hadn't gone in for the interview yet, but had I? Anyway, I don't remember the order of operations, but like I sent in my like design test for like a written design test for the thing for the potential level
And
design.
what's that? That's you describing the level you would build for this kind of game?
Yeah, they had a kind of interesting design test for that where they had you take part of a level from BioShock 1 and just say, imagine stripping all of the like gameplay out of this. And I was like, that sounds like a great idea. But they're like, take all of the like security and enemies and scripting and stuff out mentally, and then just like pitch us, if you just had that space, what you would describe the gameplay that you would put into this. Like they basically gave me like a different pitch for what would happen there, and they were like, how would you build this pitch for this part of the game? So you just wrote it out, and since I had since I'd done art in up to that point, I like did little hand-drawn illustrations of like splicers and stuff. I think I pitched that there had been a party going on in the Fighting McDonough's bar in Neptune's Pride Neptune's Bounty. Neptune's Pride is a different game. In BioShock 1, and I pitched a drunk party splicer that had a party hat on.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I drew my like drunk party splicers like, And I assume they found that cute. Because I sent it in, and then I just remember like I was just like dying of stress so much, just like wondering if I was gonna get a call back. Basically, I would just like check my email and then just like go stress out, and then check my email like, but like luckily they were like, okay, we'll bring you in for an interview. You know what I mean? I ended up kind of being the right fit for that stage in the studio's life. It's still like, even now, half of our studio is ex-2K Marin, and our programmer our programmer Leon started on the same day as me, and our level designer Tynan started on the same week as me. So like we were like right in there.
2K must hate you. You just came in, you took all these people out with you.
I've
always said this.
That was after 2K Marin.
No,
most of those people.
Fine. I guess they don't hate you then.
I don't think they do.
Okay.
Do you think they do,
Kevin, do they hate him? Does 2K hate Steve?
I don't think companies get mad about that.
I've always said, yeah.
You don't think companies have feelings?
Yeah, no.
I don't think companies are real people.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if you work at a company and you leave and you take a whole bunch of those people, I think that company generally doesn't care. Shut up. Joke!
Level designer, BioShock 2. Yes.
So how long do you stay on at 2K Marin? Because you do BioShock 2, but then you go and you work on this thing called Minerva's Den.
Yeah. So I was on, BioShock 2 from pretty early in development, and that game, I think, actually had a pretty tight development schedule. That game was like less than 2 years, I think.
Okay.
I think it was like 18, 19 months, something like that. Sure. I can't remember exactly, but maybe it was like a year and 8 months or something. So I was on from pretty early, and yeah, I had been, I built Pauper's Drop, which was the 4th level of the game, and then I went back and built the first level of the game, because a lot of times you kind of build the first level last, so you know what you're setting up, and so I was the guy that caught having to do the intro level.
No big deal.
Yeah,
no pressure.
And so to your point, that means that on some level they like built trust in me over the course of development up to that point to think that I could take the first level, and I did that and worked out fine. And so at that point there was internally they were kind of like, okay, we're not even going to talk about DLC until the main game is locked, because main game has to get out. We can't be splitting our attention, whatever. But I had been thinking about DLC ideas, and basically as soon as the game was locked, I was kind of like pitching. I was like, hey, I know we're going to do DLC. I was thinking, story DLC, like maybe something like this would be cool, or whatever, And I think there were a lot of people at the studio who were kind of excited to get onto something new, because we've been working on BioShock stuff for like a long time, right? And
burnout's a big problem for game developers, right? I mean, that's what I always hear, especially when you're on something that is like you've been in forever.
Yeah. And like the XCOM FPS was like wasn't a new IP, it was still XCOM, but it was like a totally new creation. So I think a lot of people were excited to get onto that. But I was sort of like, I'm down for more BioShock. Can we do some more BioShock?
Yeah.
And so between those two aspects, the lead designer of the game, Zach McClendon, just put a lot of trust in me and pulled me aside one day, and we went into a meeting room, and he was like, all right, so you've been pitching DLC, did a good job on the main game, you're going to be the lead designer of the DLC, you can write it. And I was like, okay. Because I had helped with writing stuff on the main game as well.
Sure.
Like during the main game, at some point they had been like looking for a contract writer to write like some audio diaries and like some splicer barks and stuff like that. Barks being what enemies say when they're attacking you.
Gotcha.
And stuff like that. There's a lot of like reloading, etc. in games, but like in BioShock, it's cool because they're all like crazy splicers, so they get to say weird stuff, which is fun. So they were looking for a contract writer for stuff like that, and at some point I was like, hey, I wrote comics and I write this blog and I'd like
I can
to
string
help.
2 words together.
Yeah, exactly. It's like if you need some help, and they were kind of like, we'll let you know. And then like sometime near the end of development, they were like, we still need more writing. Didn't you say you would do an extra job for the same pay? Okay. I wrote I think most of the splicer barks in BioShock 2 and some like audio diaries and stuff. So I could kind of like get the tone of Rapture and all that kind of stuff. So they let me write the script and all the written content for Minerva's Den. So yeah, them really going out on a limb and saying like, here's your first lead gig, like go for it. It's a small team. It's a short turnaround. You don't get to like expand the scope or like miss your date or anything. Just like make something that we can actually ship and make it good. Was huge, and it was really a really good first experience to be in charge of a small team within a big organization that can help support you and working on like DLC for a sequel to a shipped game. It's just like a very stable base with a lot of like Lego pieces to work with. So we were just kind of able to just like execute,
Real quick aside, how abnormal is your story? It feels like I don't hear you seem like, I'm not saying you skipped rungs on the ladder, but it seems like a meteoric rise to me. Am I right or wrong about that? I mean, you put in the work, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying like this, that, or the other, but it's like, oh, no, I'm a sculptor. Well, maybe I'll make games. All right, I got this. No, I'm just doing this BioShock thing on my own.
I mean, I'm certainly very fortunate.
Sure.
Right? Like I've had a lot of lucky opportunities, and I've been stars have aligned.
And it's one of those things. I mean, it's one of those. It's not luck, obviously. It's talent, right? Talent it leads to luck sometimes.
It's lucky to be given the opportunity.
Sure.
It's lucky to even like be in the situation where something like that might happen.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And I'm lucky that I had some of the right things to actually like take advantage of those opportunities when I was lucky enough to have them, right?
Yeah.
And so like, you do have to work really hard to hopefully be able to do the thing you want to do if you're given the opportunity to do it. But yeah, it's all about like it's right place, right time, committing yourself to actually like taking the job seriously when you get a crack at it, and having a ton of support from people that believe in you and can help you do a better job. So Carla Zamanja is my creative partner at Fullbright. We started working together on BioShock 2 at 2K Marin. She was kind of like a script supervisor, like VO production person was one of the hats she wore on the main game. And so we started working together when I was writing splicer barks for the main game and writing audio diaries and stuff. And I would submit my scripts, and her job was to like, format them and everything, but she also like gave me feedback on the writing while I was doing it, and we kind of developed a back and forth of her making my writing better and being like, do you really want to say this or whatever? And so on Minerva's Den, we continued that, and she was one of the full-time members of that team, and so she was like my story editor for all of the writing stuff, the story, the audio diaries, the actual plot, etc. On Minerva's Den, and she's also a 2D artist, so she had done like a bunch of posters and 2D art in the main game, and then she did all of that for Minerva's Den. And so going forward, working on Gone Home, that was like why we made the game that we did, basically, because it was.
Yourself.
I know, but I'm just saying.
Ahead of your stories here.
I'm just saying. I think that it's easy to say like I XYZ, but it's sort of like I think part of. I guess what I'm trying to say is part of getting to a place where you're able to do stuff like that is recognizing how you can work with other people to make you more able to do good stuff.
Sure.
As opposed to just saying like, I'm so awesome, I'm gonna nail it. It's more like, well, if I worked with them and they could get us to a really good place, then we could do something great together.
Right.
So it's really it's like even just like I mentioned about like my professor in college, or like my wife taking into account that I wanted to get into games, or when she decided to go to school where she went, just like all that kind of stuff. It's sort of like
you have a good team.
It's the ability to know how to kind of like rely on people. I think to get somewhere together.
No. Well said.
Yeah.
So
games.
Minerva's Den comes out.
Yeah.
And multiple people, not just Marty, say it's the best DLC of all time. Does that earn you sneers in the office? Because you've come out, you outclassed everybody else already. You're this young kid nobody believed in. There you go. Kevin's nodding in agreement.
Yeah, well, he's pissed.
Pound it out, Kev. Found out how good there it is.
No, Kevin was like, yeah, you mother.
Yeah. You
Yeah,
stealing bread off the
what's
table.
your problem? Yeah, everybody hated me. No, no, it was. I think it was something that everybody who got to work on it felt really lucky to be a part of, because it was sort of like there is so much overhead. There's so many big challenges when you're trying to make a game like the main game of BioShock 2.
Sure.
Because like they were trying to build a team and a game at the same time, and there had to be multiplayer, and there had to be like, there was all this, there were all of these dependencies, all these things pulling it in different directions. There was like, we had to figure out how to make a game together as a team. We have to figure out how to make a game that feels like BioShock, but also feels like it's like expanded in interesting ways. There were just all these kind of like these different layers of what had to be accomplished all at once, right? And so Minerva's Den was basically our opportunity to say like, now we know how to do all that stuff. We can just make this thing.
Let's focus. Like, we have a focus, a single player, and let's get in there.
And so, I think if anything, it was cool to be able to say like, it was a long road, but we got to make something that was sort of like unfettered by most other overhead, except just like make some really good BioShock. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But it was also the last thing that I did at 2K Marin.
I was going to say, clearly the success went right to your head and you quit.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what it was. That's the way I understand it. You walked in there and you said, I'm out.
Well, I mean, some of it was...
These were the keys to the studio, by the way. Because I had you throwing something saying you're out.
Okay.
I just want you to know, it was the key. They gave you the key to the studio. They're like, you're so in charge.
I thought maybe it was just like a coffee mug or something.
No, why would you do that? That's rude.
Kevin,
why? Can you believe we let this heathen into the house? Protect all the coffee mugs. This is not the spotted dick.
I mean, it was one of those things where it was sort of like, I did sign on at 2K Marin because I was a huge fan of BioShock. I was a huge fan of System Shock 2. I love those kinds of games, and I loved what Irrational did, and we made BioShock 2, made the DLC for BioShock 2. They weren't making any more BioShock at that studio.
Yeah.
And, God, I remember, so I was working on Minerva's Den, and while I was working on Minerva's Den, Irrational, released their first like pre-rendered trailer for BioShock Infinite.
Right.
And that's the one where it starts, you see the bottom of the sea, you see the rocky, etc. There's a little like Rapture city, and then you zoom out and it's like a little aquarium, and then a big giant foot like stomps on it and smashes it. And I was working on Minerva's Den, set in Rapture, etc. And I see that teaser, I'm like, guys, I'm still using that. And I was like, and it was like, I just went off. I drove down the highway to In-N-Out Burger. I had a Sadness Burger all by myself. And then I got back to work. And
the joke was on them. It was still like, they announced it, like, we're going to put out in 5 years. Everyone's like, what? Why are you even telling me about this game?
But, that was in my mind that it was sort of like, we finished Minerva's Den, and the team that made BioShock is making a new BioShock.
Right.
And I just knew it was something that I wanted to try to be a part of.
Yeah.
So after Minerva's Den came out, it was pretty much like unbeknownst to me, it ended up being kind of like my application at Irrational. It was sort of like, hey, look, I made a bunch of BioShock. People say it's good. Do you guys like it?
Yeah.
I want to do level design for you guys if you've got a spot for me. So that was the transition for me, that I wanted to continue working in that space and exploring like what you could do with that property, and work at Irrational with people that I had idolized, that made games that I had been a fan of, for years and years.
So you go out there.
Yeah.
And that's all the way out on the East Coast, right?
Yeah, it's up in Boston.
Do you leave the wife out here again?
No, she came. She came that time. Yeah. We had done enough long distance. I mean, speaking of skipping ahead to Gone Home. Yeah, my wife and I have been together since high school, and we were in a long distance relationship when we were in high school. So
really? Oh, wow. How'd that happen?
We met each other online.
In EverQuest, I assume.
on an IRC channel.
Oh my God, really?
Yep.
Oh, you're such a nerd. I love it.
I know. And so yeah, we had done a couple of years of long days since then. We did it again when I moved out to Texas, and then we were like, that's not happening anymore.
Yeah.
We weren't married when I moved out to Texas, so it was like additionally hard. So like so we were kind of like, there's no more of that.
Yeah.
So she had finished her grad school. We went out to Boston together, and I started working at Irrational.
Okay. And so what happens? How long are you at Irrational? Because you don't stay on to ship BioShock anymore.
No, me and Kenny hung out for like a year.
Okay. And you realized this guy is the emperor with no clothes. I'm getting out of here. This Ken Levine's duped in industry.
Well, I mean, he did walk around the studio naked sometimes.
Speaking of spot a dick, no.
No, I was there for a year.
Okay. And what happened?
I mean, I was a level designer on BioShock Infinite as well. I was a senior level designer.
Ooh.
So I was mostly responsible while I was there for kind of pitching levels, right? So Ken had a general outline for the flow of the game. Like, this happens at the beginning. Here's a specific scene I have in mind.
Gotcha.
Here's kind of the story moment that happens to this next level and what the whole idea of it is, and like, that. And then so a lot of my job was to go through and like, and also take into account like, the shotgun's going to be introduced here, and this plasmid needs to be part of the quest or whatever.
Sure.
And basically write up level design documents and bring them to Ken and the other leads and say like, here's a pitch for the specifics of like what happens to the player over the course of the level, and then kick it back and forth and be like, well, that's not really like this thing that I'm thinking of. It doesn't really work with that or whatever. And then once we got to the point where a level pitch was like solid enough, I worked with a level artist to do like the first like gray block like prototype for it. So I did the level docs and first like gray block of a lot of the levels. Like some of the levels, a fair amount of things in kind of like the first half, 2/3 of the game.
Okay.
The level that I was the most responsible for, that kind of like I got furthest before I left, was Finkton, the like factory town.
Oh right, yeah.
Where you're like jumping back and forth between dimensions to try to like start the revolution, etc. So it was really cool. It was like I'm 100% aware and grateful for the fact that like I kind of had the job that you would want if you were a designer.
Sure.
Where it's like, my job is to sit around with Ken and be like, here's what I think would be cool if it was in the game, Dad. And he's like, well, I don't know about that.
I don't know, son.
Yeah. And so, because on the one hand, a lot of the job was like, come up with ideas, come up with concrete pitches for like, here's the flow, et cetera, bring them to Ken, see what he thinks.
Yeah.
And like, that's great. That's a great learning experience for someone to be like, this guy who's made stuff that I'm such a fan of, here's how he thinks and how he would react to my first version of like XYZ, et cetera. It's also a really hard job for your job description to be, come up with ideas that some other guy is going to think are cool.
Yeah.
Because it's like, you aren't going to bat 1,000 on that.
Yep.
You're going to think something's awesome, and he's going to be like, that's not really how I was picturing it. And that's fine. That's the whole point.
Sure.
But like, you're just going to get shot down a lot, no matter what, right?
Sure.
So, but like all of that aside, the biggest thing for me was, I worked there for a year, and by the end of the year, I just realized I had gone from working on a pretty big team, on a big project, on BioShock 2, it was like 80-something people on site there, to, on Minerva's Den, it was 9 full-time developers for like 9 months.
Yeah.
And then going back to Irrational and it being like 100+ people on a project that had already been going for like 2 or 3 years before I got there.
Yeah.
Right. And despite all of the really positive things about like getting to work on a really ambitious project with people who've been doing amazing stuff for decades, learning a ton from them, being able to contribute, I just realized it's like, I don't think that I want to work on games this big anymore. Because like, when you're on a game that huge, I think no matter who you are, you just can't see the whole thing at once.
Oh, sure.
You just can't. You just don't know. It's too big to like fit in your vision. It's just like.
I understand.
And so I think even if you're Ken, your job is to kind of like hold the vision of all of it. But like, there's just so much of it,
Yeah.
right? And something that was wonderful about working on Minerva's Den and then later working on Gone Home is you can have the entire team that's making the thing sit around together in one room, and you can kind of be like, hey, I think we should try this. Could we do that? And the programmer,
It's like, yes or
can be
no,
like,
yeah.
I'll give it a shot, and maybe if we could do it this other way, and then half an hour later, like I got that thing on screen, it's like, let's do the second one. You were actually right, and then it's in the game, right? And just that, and it's small enough that you can be like, I actually know everything
Start
that's
to
in this
finish,
game.
middle,
Like
and every little
there's
nook.
nothing that I'm like, oh, that's in our game. You know, it's like no, I mean, the game, like it all fits, right? And that difference in scope and just kind of like your relationship to the project, I think was just really stark for me, you know? And so I had been there for a year, and it was one of those things where I was at that point where I either needed to commit to shipping the game or I needed to get out before I was just fucking other people over.
Sure.
Because if you leave right in the middle of like the crunchiest crunch, somebody else is just screwed, right?
Yeah,
like everybody's already doing too much work. Now other people have to pick up all the work that you're not. There's not time to replace you. There's not time to train somebody.
Yeah, exactly. You can't bring somebody up to speed on what you're doing.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I was sort of like, okay, I've been here for a year. I either need to stay through this thing being out the door, or I just need to say like, I'm really sorry, guys, but like, I have to do the right thing and like break off now while
If
it's
your
not
heart's
gonna...
not in it, right, that's a completely different
Yeah,
thing too.
if-
You're
yeah.
going to be miserable, but sure, you're going to make people miserable around you. The work will suffer.
Yeah, and frankly, we just, my wife and I just wanted to get back to Portland as well. Like she's from Portland. I went to college in Portland. I lived in Oregon for like, I think 4 years before we moved down to San Francisco.
Yeah.
It was where, it was what I thought of as home. It was like my adoptive home,
Sure.
you know,
Sure,
and,
sure,
and
sure.
it's where my wife was from. So we were just sort of like, if we're going to do it, we just need to like get off of the treadmill of like, well, it's not a treadmill, but like off of the track of like chasing jobs around the country, going
Yeah.
where the thing is, whatever. If we've just decided we're at that point where we need to like go to where we want to be and then figure out how we can make that work, we just
Yeah.
need to do it, right? So we moved back to Portland and just had to figure it out from there, you know?
But was that, I still figured it out from there. I mean, you're blowing, I'm just going to figure it out. I got that over to you. What, so you blow it up. I mean, does your wife have a job in Portland?
I blow it up.
You blow it up. You blow up your life in Boston.
So
I'm using the Wile E.
I plunged
Coyote.
the dynamite.
Yeah. And we're going to move back to Portland, honey.
Yeah.
Does she have a job? Do you know you're going there to found a video game studio and make things? Or
Not really. I mean, I started talking to Carla and Joneman, the co-founders of the Fullbright company, around when I decided
were
to...
they still at 2K?
Yeah, they were still at 2K here in San Francisco.
Sure.
But all I knew was we were going to move back to Portland. And I did like some contracting work. I did like some remote contracting work in the meantime,
Okay.
kind of between getting here and starting working on Gone Home. But it was the kind of thing where it was like, well, you know, I can do like contracting, consulting, whatever kind of stuff, and
Sure.
just try to kind of make it work. But if I want to keep making the kind of games that like I know how to make and that I want to be working on, like in a kind of like tangible way, in that like visceral way of like this is the kind of stuff I want to be making, then I just have to figure out how to start something up ourselves, you know, because
Sure.
especially at that time, and still now, Portland isn't a town where you can just like apply for a level design job somewhere. There's not studios like that there, and so it was sort of like, it was also at the time where like Dear Esther and Amnesia and it was post Braid and Limbo and Bastion, and there was
So
sort of
indie was the thing.
there was sort of
Yeah,
that feeling of like, oh, you can do this now. Like you
Yeah.
can have a small team and make something that's really cool that no one's that is unique and people haven't played before, and you can get it out there and like make that a success. And so it was sort of the synthesis of those two things to say like, if I'm going to be in Portland and want to do something like what I know how to do, I have to figure out how to like start something up. And if you can get a small team together and figure out how to make something that like stands out, you can actually make a go of it, right? And so that was what was really the motivator for saying like, if I can get a couple of people that we've all worked together, that we have a skill set that can like add up to a game, have them come up to Portland where it's way cheaper than the Bay Area, et cetera, like maybe we can make something happen, you know?
So was it a hard sell to do that with these folks down here that are living in Marin? The good life at 2K where they're throwing darts at your face every day on a board. This guy left us.
I don't want to speak for them, but I don't really think so.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that they were both at a point where they were interested in kind of like getting out of like the big AAA space.
Sure.
And I mean, it's one of the things about like starting a thing like that is some of it is just down to being lucky that the people that you know who have skills also have the availability to take a risk like this, right? Like none of us had kids. You know, my other two co-founders weren't married. You know, like they could just sort of say like, we've got savings. Nobody's going to be let down if I just pick up and move and take a risk on this thing. Let's go for it. You know, it was just a time and place and situation kind of thing, right? So, you know, because like I think a lot of people just don't have the option. They're like, well, I've got kids and I've got a mortgage and I've got student loans, and it's just like,
but it's also just,
you know, I need a salary. I can't just like live without a salary for long enough to do something like this, or I can't uproot my family to do this or whatever, right? So like, as far as luck and opportunity goes, it was just sort of like right people, right time, right situation to actually like run with it.
Because I mean, we talk about all the time, you know, like when we left, right? And we always talk about, oh, we left the sure thing to come do this. Like, we had, you know, money coming in right away.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, when you guys leave and you're going to go find a studio and stuff, it's going to be years until you put out a product, right?
So this is a Spotted Dick sponge pudding?
Yeah, it's a British thing, and that's why I was saying
It says
Abomination.
microwavable.
You take it out of the can first.
Yeah, I was going to say, you shouldn't you shouldn't assume that the audience for Spotted Dick knows enough about microwave technology to not just you shouldn't put that on the can.
But see,
that implies the can is microwavable.
This is very similar to burritos here in San Francisco. Stick with me. In the way that I think Spotted Dick is such a staple over there in merry old England that they've grown up on it. Everybody knows you don't put the can in the
like, you take it out of the can, governor.
Exactly. Governor. Oi, governor, take it out of the can, don't you? But it's the same way here. When
Yours was worse than mine somehow.
No, mine was spot on, actually.
Spotted
Dick on.
Okay.
The same thing here now in San Francisco. How many times I watch people get a burrito and they start to unwrap the entire...
yeah,
you're like, whoa, what are
buddy.
you doing? That's not how you do it.
From the top.
Yeah, and they're like, that's how I do it in Texas. I'm like, well, Texas is fucked up. Don't do that.
One of the worst things.
Exactly, of course.
I don't remember what we were talking about.
We're building up to Gone Home.
Cool.
We're talking about, you got everybody out.
Yeah.
Everybody's doing it. Everybody's coming up. They're getting ready to.
Okay.
Taking chances.
Yes.
How do you get them to come up there with no money?
Oh,
are you just like, well, leave your big company job that has benefits and all this other stuff and all, it's all amazing, and come up here and maybe in a year and a half I'll have some money that we can give you?
Yeah.
Is that, I mean, here's the thing about it is like, you know, again, like you guys are all artists and stuff and you're smoking your cigarettes and your little berets on the side there and your little striped shirts.
Uh-huh.
You're all excited to be, is it really just that love of the art and the belief of the project? And so then when you're pitching them of like, hey guys, I got this radical idea. I fucked up my life and moved to Portland. Why don't you come up here too and then unfuck my life? Because if you come up here and unfuck mine, then we get to make games together. Did you have
Fair enough.
Did you already have? I just punched Portillo. Did you already have the idea for Gone Home? Did you have a pitch to give them, or were you just pitching them on coming up and let's make something?
I think it was somewhere in between. So like, we had the advantage of we had worked together before.
Yeah.
They had seen me lead a project that
so they believe in you.
Came out and was good.
Yeah.
You know, and I had I had a pitch. The pitch I started with was more complex than the one we ended up with. It was just like it would have been too much stuff to build, but it started from a pitch of like a non-combat first-person game.
Okay.
That had, you know, a few more moving parts to it, but I was sort of like, I think we could do this, blah blah blah. And then as they, you know, as everybody got on board, we kind of refined it and pushed it and said like, if we focused it down even more, if we just said like, what if it's just exploring the space, finding the story of what happened there, finding the evidence of these people's lives, notes and environmental storytelling, and hearing the story in these characters' own words, that can be like the whole experience, right?
Sure.
And speaking of my like blog and everything, it was sort of the culmination of a bunch of design ideas that I had been working towards kind of like in what I was writing about and what I was thinking about for a lot of years, you know? I don't think that was really a factor in them deciding whether to do a thing or not, but it was sort of like, the idea didn't come out of nowhere. It was sort of like, for me, I think, it was like, well, this is the time where all that stuff I've been thinking about can actually be like the solution to the problem of like, this is something we could make. You know, this is something I've thought about how this could be the heart of an experience if we could invest in it and make a game that was small enough to like be all about that and et cetera, right? So before they actually got to Portland and like got on site and we started.
You're walking up to your front door, yeah?
Yeah, we had come up with the idea of Gone Home, and we had like basic like design documents for Gone Home, and we, you know, we're starting to try some stuff out in Unity and everything. So, you know, by the time that they were there, we could really say like, we know what project we're working on, and we can start putting it on screen, you know?
So timeout. Now's when the spoilers will start.
Okay.
For Gone Home. I'm going to do a whole, in my head, I've designed the fact that we talked for an hour and 15 minutes about, in the Gone Home cast, not about Gone Home.
Yeah.
That I want to do a thing at the front. Where I'm going to say, hey, I mentioned the very beginning spoilers. You got a long time. So just hang on if you want to find out about how he became
Stick around to the 1:15 mark.
Yeah. And everybody's like, yeah, of course. Where am I going to go? So you talked about, you just said, you know, you had this stuff you've been kicking around, all these different things to make this part. Does it start with the story, or does it start with the mechanics? Was it that you wanted to tell the story, or was it that you wanted to have first-person non-combat exploration?
It definitely starts with the mechanics.
Okay. Is that something, I mean, what is that like during Minerva's Den, BioShock, you're like, this is fun, but it'd be cool to walk around and not have any gun and not have anything.
Well, I mean, that is how Minerva's Den ends, right? That's the last like 10 minutes of Minerva's Den. That was our opportunity to say like, you've beaten the boss. You're past the point of like combat being relevant. Like you've gotten past like the story climax, you know? So all that's left here is just to like tail out the story and just let you kind of sit with it. And so we took that kind of, it was, you know, a little bit of a risk, or just sort of something, you know, sort of unorthodox to be like, okay, you're gonna beat the last boss, you're gonna go down this elevator, and then we're just gonna, you know, not call it out, but we're just going to put your hands down, and the rest of the thing is just like listen to an audio diary, explore this space, get to the end, finish it up, have closure in that way, right? And so Gone Home was an extension, you know, was like a continued exploration of that. But I just think it's really important to always start first from what is the player doing, you know what I mean? Like, and that's what led to all of our creative decisions. So for us, it was like you start from the point of we started from the point of, I think it would be really interesting if the player was just able to explore space really deeply interactively, open all of the cabinets and drawers and dig through and find things behind, you know, something that fell behind the dresser, and like just a little scrap of paper and a note, and put all these pieces together into the story that happened here. And if, you know, because that's a relatively small part of a lot of bigger games, you know, that's an important aspect, like a sub part of like BioShock or whatever. And it's kind of chicken and egg, where because it's not the thing the game is about, it's not like the most robustly kind of supported part of the experience. And because it's not super robustly supported, you can't really go into like deep detail into that stuff, right? And so our thinking was, you know, if you can, open all the drawers, and you can look under the bed, and you can like zoom in on things, and you can read multiple pages of every document, et cetera, then that robustness and that level of detail to just the experience of just like be in a place, investigate it, be a detective, find out, you know, what the story of this place, how it led to the state that it's in now, that could be, you know, the whole game. And so that's the starting point. And going from there to then like, okay, well, if that's true, you could apply that to whatever. You know, like you could apply it to a fantasy setting. You could apply it to an ancient times setting, or let's say a far future space station setting.
Sure.
But you know, we were sort of like, you could apply this to just like a family's house. You know, like, because part of it was like, we're a small team. We can't build a city We can't build if we want to make a game where it's contingent upon every space being really dense with stuff to find that's meaningful, it's kind of like, well, we could build a family's house. Every square foot of a family's house tells you something about who the people are that live here, right? And so then that leads to like, okay, well, so who are the people that live in the house, and what did happen to them, and when did it take place? And where is this house, and what kind of house is, all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
But it definitely didn't start from, we want to tell this story about these girls in the 90s. How do we do that?
Sure.
It was more like we want to have this experience that has all these requirements of like what would make it interesting, what can best express those mechanics and that kind of like interactive paradigm in a way that we can actually build it. That we don't need a team of 100 people to build it.
Okay. So then you're kicking this around, you have the idea that folks move up, and you all live in a house together, right? Wasn't that the deal?
Yep.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we rented a house together. I never heard of anybody else that did anything like that.
No, never. There's never been a bunch of people who live in the same house and make much stuff. Don't look at my castle walls, clearly. My San Francisco home studio.
We rented a house together in Portland, the three of us, and then our 3D artist, Kate, lives up in Canada, so she worked remotely and came down to visit sometimes.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And so we're saying that, it doesn't start with these, we're going to tell a story about two girls in the 90s or whatever. When does that enter the equation?
That's fairly soon after.
Yeah.
I think that from a writing perspective, our point of view was, takes place in a family's house.
Mm-hmm.
The whole game is going to take place inside the house. So, like, this has to be about drama between the family members that live here, right? Because it can't be about, there's events in the game that take place outside of the house, but it can't be about, like, inherently stuff that isn't about drama between the family members. And so, we were like, what are some examples of that? What are some like classic kind of reasons that there can be these like irreconcilable differences between family members, between generations, between parents and kids or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so we were like, well, one classic example is like Romeo and Juliet.
Sure.
Right? Because we were like, okay, if we want like kind of the protagonist or the center of the story that you're following to be a teenager, it's like teenage love. That's like that's something that can be very volatile, right? That can lead to an interesting story. And so Romeo and Juliet, maybe not like Montagues and Capulets are like super relevant to a game that takes place in the 90s, but we're like, okay, but the kid falls in love with somebody that their family doesn't approve of. A modern version of that is like a gay love story.
Sure.
She falls in love with another girl, her parents don't approve, society doesn't approve. Like, how does she as an individual deal with that? Like, what and how does it lead to there not being anybody in the house at the end? Because it was sort of like a pitch for the mechanics of the game. It's just like, it's just you and the environment. There isn't anybody else around. So where did everybody go? Is like the question you have to answer. And so we were like, okay, if it's about Sam and it's about who she falls in love with, and it's about why they're not here anymore, what are the events of a story and what are the details of the characters and the setting and everything else that leads to that?
Yeah.
And so, it's like, it's really useful. It's, you talk about how constraints lead to creativity and necessity is the mother of invention, and like a lot of lame aphorisms.
No, they're not lame.
and so like, those are like the mechanical and scope restrictions. Those are like good constraints that lead to you not just having like a blank page in front of you and being like, what story are we going to tell? I don't know, but being like, we have these like practical problems in front of us for like what we can do with this game.
Sure.
And what the player can do in the game. And so like, how does our fiction answer those questions? Not just like, what do we want to write about today? You know what I mean?
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So we wouldn't have written the story that we wrote if it wasn't for saying like, here's what you can do in the game.
One
here's
person in the house, and we only have a house.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just the player, a house. Here's the stuff you can do. Okay. What's an interesting thing to find out in what supports that? You know what I mean?
So like how, I guess for this brainstorming and for how this is happening, how how long is that process? Is that every day before you set off to do something? Because for me, like the thing about it is, and this is something I've been talking about a lot on Kind of Funny with Emily's Away. Did you play that yet?
I've played some of it. I didn't. Yeah, I think I played like an early version of it.
What I talk about with Emily is Away, right, is the fact that all it is this text adventure, right, through AIM or whatever.
Yeah.
But in reality, for me, it's a time machine.
Right.
Because I play it and I'm back at my desk at Mizzou, you know,
Right.
in 2001 when I left, went away to college.
Yeah,
And was doing it.
You've got your Linkin Park
Yeah,
user icon.
totally. Yeah, my little Blink 182 one down there. And that's the thing, same way with Gone Home, where playing it, and my story's tired and everybody's heard it before, but I knew nothing about it. I just knew that I needed to play it. Everyone, like Marty put up the review, I scrolled the score and I was like, okay, great. And then I remember Justin McElroy was saying the same thing, just go play this, don't read anything about it, da da da. And so I went and did it that one weekend, and I wasn't prepared to go back to my childhood home, right? Which is like, and like, again, and I always talk about it like in Emily is Away, it makes me nostalgic for things I didn't even know I missed.
Right.
And this is the same way of opening a drawer and I'm like, this is my mom's junk drawer. I remember this, where it was just pads and pens and papers and all this other junk and like rubber bands and like those little clips. You're like, awesome. And then it's everywhere you turn in that house. There, you're like, this isn't my house, but it's my house. You know what I mean? Like, those building blocks are so crazy because I can't imagine building something like that because, again, I wouldn't know what I was missing, I feel like.
Sure. Well, and that's a big part of why. So again, the mechanical constraints are why we chose the time period and the setting, which is to say, like, we were like, we don't want there to be email. We don't want there to be.
Where is everybody? Let me call any of them who are constantly dialed into everything.
Because part of the premise for the game ends up being that, or ended up being that the player character you're playing as, Katie, has been away in Europe for a year, and her only contact with the family has been like postcards.
Yeah.
Nowadays, she'd be on Facebook with them every day.
She
knows exactly what's going on, right?
Yeah.
And so we were like, okay, well, mid-90s is because we wanted to rewind the clock as little as possible, but to the point where you're still finding sticky notes and hearing answering machine messages and seeing like physical TV guide,
Trapper
clippings.
Keepers and SNES cartridges.
Well, I mean, so that's kind of the other side of it, though, right? Because our reason for saying it's 1995 is so there would be newspaper clippings, and so there would be like handwritten letters that mom's friend had sent to her in the mail that you can find in a drawer. Because what we need to do is say, like, mechanically, the game is explore every inch of this house and just find bits and pieces of the story everywhere. So there's a letter in this drawer, and there's a note from school in Sam's backpack, and there's a, and in this day and age, it would all just be Facebook posts and emails and text messages.
Sure.
And so then the other side of that is once we're like, okay, so it's 1995. All right. We remember the advantage of setting it in a time that you've lived through is you can just remember whether it feels like it's right or not.
Right.
You can be in the living room and you can be like, I remember my dad used to record a lot of movies off of HBO and just they were hand labeled on VHS tapes. We should put that in. Like we need the binder we need like the Trapper Keeper from school. We need the Magic Eyes. So
did you guys go and look like through your old photo albums and stuff like that?
Yeah. I mean, some of the photos in the game are like paintovers of photos of my wife's family.
Yeah.
Because she and her siblings grew up at the right time and had the right distribution of like brothers and sisters and mom and dad.
Yeah.
We like painted a mustache on my wife's dad. And it was very much like, let's go back and look through it. Let's like think back to what was in my room when I was growing up. I was a little goofy like plastic basketball hoop on the back of the door. And if it felt authentic to us because we were like, oh, I remember this should be here, other people are going to have that same ping of like, oh man, I remember when you did get TV Guide in the mail and you had to look at it to see when shows were going to be on TV. I remember having a high school textbook that looked like it had a cover like this, you know, and you
remember your dad sending you really disapproving letters, tearing them up, throwing them away.
And so, so hopefully that from both directions just makes it feel like authentic. You're it's like you said, I remember a place like this. I feel like I could have been here.
Yeah, the living room with the big TV and the couch and the pillow forts. I'm like, that's Mike Boylan's basement. I remember that. You know what I mean? Like that's how it feels.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how long do you work on Gone Home the first time? Not this concert deal you're putting out now.
It was about a year and a half.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah.
When do you know you're onto something? Like you're working on this thing, it's cool, this is great. I don't know, but I imagine for you, I mean, people are like, Minerva's Den is the best. Are you like, can I do that again? Am I overthinking this? Da 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 da.
I think it was more a question of like we were kind of off on our own, so it was sort of like, can we make a game that we just start from a fresh install of Unity and like get it out in front of people?
Yeah.
You know, like we had savings from when we were working in AAA. It's like, can we actually get this done in the amount of time before
we're broke?
Yeah. You know, and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, there was just the question of like, can we make a game that's just this stuff and do a good enough job with that it supports the whole experience, right? We were encouraged, I think, all the way through. We did a lot of playtesting. You know, we sent the game to other developers that we knew that we'd either worked with before or that we were, you know, fans of their games and kind of knew them through like conferences or whatever. And you know, I remember very early on, I had like the earliest version of the game that was just like gray block, temp, everything. And I let somebody who we used to work with at 2Gamer in play it, and I was like, would you want to play more of this?
Yeah.
You know, like, and he was like, yeah, I would. I want to keep going. I want to find more stuff. And I'm like, okay. Yeah. And kind of as we kept going and sent playtests out, you know, we were just encouraged that some things that I learned about playtesting from working at like 2K was, you know, the most important questions are like, was there any time that you felt confused or frustrated or bored or you just wanted to quit?
Yeah.
And when we made our IGF demo, which was the whole game up until you opened Sam's locker in her room, basically, we were sending out playtests with kind of that question. And you know, when we made that demo and showed it to other developers that we knew, it was really consistently like people saying like, I didn't want to stop playing. Like, there's not more. Like, I have to know what happens after this part. Or like, you know, we took that build down to San Francisco because we lived in Portland we'd moved. You know, we were based in Portland by that time. We brought it back down here and showed it to a bunch of press, and we were like, okay, we'll take the build. We'll give you like half an hour to just play it. Sure. And then we can talk to you about it or whatever. And a bunch of, you know, people that played it were like, can I play it for like just another like 10 minutes, like 15 minutes? I haven't finished it yet. You know, we're sort of like, dude, if you know, if these people like don't want to stop playing this thing that we're still, you know, have only been working on for like 6-8 months, whatever, then hopefully we're on a good path. You know what I mean? Like, hopefully we maintain and like follow that through to the end, and it's like a thing. Because all you can ask out of people is that they actually just like want to keep playing your game till they're done with it. You know, there's so many games that it's just so easy to just be like, oh yeah, I just kind of stopped playing.
Oh yeah, this got slow and I stopped to watch TV and then I found another game and never came back in.
And that's easier when your game is like 2 or 3 hours long. Sure. You know, but that was the whole focus of it, was to say like, we want to give players a game that you can play it in one long evening or in 2 evenings, you know, a couple days in a row, and feel like you were really immersed in it, you were fully invested in it, and it ended before you got tired of it, and you got to have that closure of saying like, wow, I just experienced something complete, and I remember it, and I can take that with me, and that was cool, and it didn't test my patience, it didn't like overstay its welcome, it was what it was trying to be.
No,
you know what
I understand exactly what you're saying, because like that's the, you know, I'm not gonna beat my own drum here, but I've been on the Gone Home train for a while now.
Oh yeah,
I talk about it quite a bit,
and I appreciate that.
Oh, no problem. Thank you. Well, I appreciate you making it, so don't worry about it. The thing about it though, right, is that I've beaten Gone Home once. Yeah. And then you and I at IGN did like a commentary where I think you played and showed stuff, and we walked over it and stuff. But that I couldn't hear anything. I don't know what's, you know what I mean? Like, I've beaten Gone Home.
Paying attention. You didn't care.
Well, I'm trying to think of the next thing to say, and I got, man, Americans is across the street here. I gotta go get a sandwich. No, it's the fact that I've beaten Gone Home once, and I can tell you so much about that and those characters and Sam and Lonnie, and to the point where I'm emailing fan artists and asking if I can print them off, and you're sending me this, and I'm begging you for Christmas duck and stuff like that. Like, you talk about the impact of a game, right? And like how games can, you know, affect us, and that's it for me in the way that like, I know Sam and Lonnie, you know what I mean? And like, I can sit there and we can be talking about anything else a week from now, so we can start talking about that game, and I'm right there. And why I'm so excited for today, when it comes out on PSN. It's not today. Today's not the day. Right. When it comes out on PSN though, because like I'm so excited to get it, download it, and then go into the room, shut the door, put on headphones, and just play it again. You know what I mean? And just go through and be back in that world, in that house, you know, the Greenbriar residence. And, you know, like that, the analog to that, I guess, right, is Last of Us. Whereas, like, I had beaten Last of Us once, and it was awesome and amazing, and I had such a great time with it. And I was getting ready, the Jones, to play it again. I always said I wouldn't play it again because that was my experience, right? The ending I thought was, like, really well done. It came out of nowhere for me, but then it came on PS4. I was like, you know what? I want to play. This is the time. And I put it back in, and I made it to about the dam. And I was like, it's not the same. You know what I mean? And it's like, and I still love this game, and I still love these characters, but I know that this is a bit slow, and I don't want to. And I just fell out of it like that.
And you know where it's going.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure.
Whereas this one, like, I feel like the minutia of it, right? Because it's such a dense game of like, I want to read, like you brought up the mom's friend's letter. I want to read that again because I remember the time not having the full context of the forestry department and everything. You know what I mean? Like, now that I go back and do that and read that and find that again.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I am heartened by the fact that, you know, that we never wanted to do anything that was like randomization or like, you know, things are actually like different when you replay it or anything. But a lot of people have kind of, you know, told us that when, you know, they play through it and they pick it back up and play through it again because they're just like, oh, you know, like either they want to just look for one thing and like go back and find it and like remind themselves about it, or they just kind of wanted to run through it again. That it seems like a lot of people, you kind of can't help finding stuff that you missed the first time, and hopefully it's additionally interesting because you have the context of kind of knowing what all that stuff's gonna mean. That maybe you did see it the first time and it just didn't mean anything. You forgot you had seen it. And you're like, oh, that's like gonna be about when, et cetera. You know, and that was what we always hoped, was that even though the game is totally set, you know, like everything is where it is.
When you come back, the photo of Lonnie will still be in that one drawer.
None of it's gonna actually change, but hopefully your individual experience of it feels unique and specific to you, because you know your experience was what you found in what order, and only what you might have missed some stuff.
Oh yeah.
And even that missing information just colors like what your interpretation basically.
And that's the thing, and like, you know, like I'm talking about, you know, well, I expressed to everybody not to watch this till they'd beaten it, right? And the fact of like when I went in, I'll never forget playing that game and thinking it was survival horror and like waiting for the ghost. Where's the creepy thing? Where's the jump scare going to be? And like when you hear, like for me, you know, I come in the door, I left immediately to the end table, pulled that out, and then I think I immediately went to the answer machine underneath the big photo of the family and played that in the messages. And you get the Lonnie message where she's crying and begging Sam to pick up the phone or whatever, you know what I mean? And I was like, totally a horror movie, and it wasn't until like it was all ramping up at the end where I was like, oh right, and oh she was crying, oh, you know what I mean? When it all comes together, you're like, fuck yes.
Yeah, I was really happy that stuff all stayed under wraps basically, like through release, you know, because I know that I talked to people who played it on release, you know, who went in not really knowing much of anything. And in fact, I'm thinking of somebody that I know who is queer herself and played it and didn't know anything. So if you go around in a house.
Oh, sure.
And she was playing it and she was starting to go through and she found the Lonnie photo. And then she found, like, I think it was the first audio diary where Sam is talking about like noticing Lonnie and how she has a big gold star around her and she had to like find out who she was or whatever. And she told me at that point, she was like, that was the point where I was like, wait, is this about? And like the fact that people could go in and really have that legitimate sense of like discovering what the actual heart of the game is without it being on the box, as it were. Like, I was really grateful that, you know, we did that whole preview run. That ends with their first kiss audio diary, so that was out there with all the journalists that played it if they got to that point. You know, we sent it to reviewers. So many of the reviews were basically just like, stop reading this review and go play this for yourself. Like, and all we ever said to reviewers was just like, we don't have any specific stuff we're going to ask you. Just please don't spoil anything you wouldn't have wanted to have spoiled for yourself.
Sure.
And I feel like it's a testament to the degree to which it connected with people that they were like, oh, I wouldn't want any of this spoiled. I'm just not going to mention it. And it didn't go out there.
It still doesn't. That's the thing that I still find so awesome about it, is the fact that every so often, if there's some guy who's going to say some shoddy comment about
right.
homosexuals, that's what he wants to make or whatever, and be a
Right.
dick on the internet. But like for the most part, you never see it. And there was one time, and I'm talking like in the last 6 months, where it was like the hashtag was like simplify a game in a sentence, or the one I put out was, so it turns out she's gay and she's not home, or she ran away. And like there was like even that I was like questionable about, because I talk so much about going home that I didn't want people to draw that conclusion.
Right.
But even then, it was like there was like maybe one kid who was like, "This is what I think it is. You ruined it for me." I'm like, "Oh, motherfucker, the game has been out a while."
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, but
well, and I mean, on some level, like that was the thing when we were making it. I was really in my own head, I was really adamant that I did not want Sam being gay to be like the twist.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Can this also be a Star Wars spoiler cast?
Yeah, I think everybody's seen The Force Awakens. If you haven't seen The Force Awakens, we're gonna.
I won't really do it. But
no, do it, because here's what we do. We're gonna do the tap. So I'm gonna tap. When I tap my head, that means the spoiler starts, and when I tap my head again, that means the spoiler has finished and you can come back. So mute right now.
So people talk about Force Awakens spoilers, and they're talking about how Han Solo dies, right?
Yeah.
I don't really think that's even a spoiler.
Yeah.
Like that's not like I'm gonna spoil.
We can't do a tap within a tap.
I'm spoiling Empire Strikes Back.
Okay,
You don't get to not have seen that. That's not a Luke, I am your father spoiler. Right? That like it's not that level of the movie is the twist is ruined if you know this. You can tap your head now.
You're back, welcome.
Yeah, that's no more
Sure,
Force
I
Awakens.
feel you on that. I feel you.
And so I feel like I always wanted it to be the same way with just Sam being gay, with there being like a lesbian love story in this game, is that like it just always felt like it would feel really cheap to me.
Yeah.
If you're like, and the twist is, you know, and so like from my own point of view, I don't even consider it a spoiler or like, you know, a detriment to the game.
Sure.
If you know, oh, Gone Home it's about a lesbian love story. It's about your sister runs away from home.
Yeah.
And she's gay. Okay. I mean that like you can go in knowing that.
Yeah.
And like what matters about the experience of the game is finding out who these characters are and how those facts affected them and how they got to
why
that
you got
point.
here to this point.
And so, you know, like, of course, there's value to just going in blind and being like, I'm just going to open this box and I have no idea what's going to be inside it. But I think my hope is that with Gone Home, even if you know X, Y, and Z are in this game, that you get in, you start playing, and hopefully those thoughts kind of leave your mind, and what you're concentrating on is like, well, wait, but like, how did that happen? Who are these people?
It's the
Why
journey,
was
right?
it this way?
Yeah.
So, you know, I never wanted to make a game that was spoilable in like a BioShocky way, you know, where there's just like a twist.
Yeah.
I think it's great to like kind of shield yourself from knowing too much, but you know, if you can still get into the experience and kind of immerse yourself in all the details of what the thing is really about, then hopefully it still works.
No, totally. For me, this is totally not selfish. This is totally just on me, right? For me and my lens of playing it, right? For me, the twist was when I let myself for a second believe, wait, maybe there isn't a horrible thing. You know what I mean? Maybe this is just about them. Because that was the thing of like, you know, there was always the creep level. And then I was like, oh, this is a neat little story and I'm interested in. I'm like, oh, and I remember then the first time when I was like, I got to get to the next room and find out about this. And then I got that and I was like, wait, am I playing a game about this girl falling in love? And then like the light blew up or something. I'm like, nope, back to being a horror game. This is a horror game. Something. And then it was like back and forth until it gets to that like ramp up moment of running up the stairs and pulling down the attic. And I'm like, she's gonna have hanged herself. I'm gonna walk in here, she's gonna be dead. I was like, oh, thank God.
Well, and that's that is a crazy thing too. Like, that's one of those things where it's sort of like there's the, you know, the death of the author. There's the whole like the author's intent doesn't matter, and you can like. One, as the author, can be caught by surprise by that, because until the game came out, I never even considered people thinking that she might have killed herself in the attic.
Sure.
And then people like it was really common for people to be like, I was so scared she was just going to be like hanging up there. I had to get up there but I didn't want to go up because I was afraid of what I was going to see. And I was like, and then I replayed the game through that lens.
Right.
And I was like, I can totally see how it seems like we're very intentionally setting that up.
You're doing all the Satan stuff, and you got candles.
Well, and
Ouija
there
boards.
was kind of a the one like the main thing. It's just weird. So like there was kind of like we played with it a little bit because there was like the map that leads you to the secret room that has the pentagram in it under the stairs, like says just there's a note that just says like where we'll do it with an arrow, and then it's like preparations are complete, and so like I get it that it's sort of like, oh, you could think like that's where they're gonna kill themselves so they don't have to be apart or something, you know, but like I hadn't really thought of it that way. And I hadn't thought of like the audio diary that you get when you're going up to the attic.
Yeah.
Like there's a weird thing. So like in that audio diary she talks to some of the dialogue is like Lonnie's gone and the sunset light in this house is the saddest thing I've ever seen, and I just want to sleep, and I think I'm gonna go up to the attic and wait. And like weirdly, totally naively, from my own experience, when I get really stressed out or really like depressed, I just want to sleep a lot.
Yeah.
Like I think it's just like I get stressed out that my brain is just like, why don't we just not be awake for a while?
Yeah.
And that was, but then I'm like, that could sound like she's like saying like
The
I just want to kill.
sleep.
Right.
Yeah.
And so like that's one of those things where it's so weird as a creator because you're like, oh my God, I hope that people don't feel like we're like trivializing, you know, suicide to like get a rise out of people. Like, oh, we're gonna make you think she killed herself, and it'll be you know. So and but the opposite side of it is like, when people started saying that, I looked at it and I'm like, that's a totally legitimate interpretation of like, because when you're making the thing, you see it in the order that you're putting it into the game. You never get to see it
out of order.
In the order
this, and this is
of how the player and so like you already know what's going to happen. You know what the stuff you're putting in is going to add up to, and until you see the reaction of a player who only saw the stuff in the order that they encountered it without having any foreknowledge, it can be really hard to say like, oh, if I only knew this in this order, it totally could add up to something different than where I know it's going. But I already knew where it's going, so I wasn't thinking about what else, you know. And so anyway, so seeing how people got so invested in what was going to happen to Sam as a person because they felt like they knew her and they cared about her as like someone that they felt close to over the course of this experience. Like I hate to think that we were like that it could come off as being manipulative, that we were like, because I hate stuff where it's like, we're gonna make you love this character and then we're gonna kill him so you're sad, you know. But I think it is a testament to the fact that the experience connects with people, that they were so worried. And not because it's going to like change, not because it's going to destroy the world or something, but just because they're like, I don't want something bad to happen to her.
And I'm not reading like, you know, your feedback inbox or anything, but even when I thought, oh my God, she's going to be dead up there, and I got up there, I was so relieved.
Right.
And then you figure out when you have that breath, and you're like, that's what this meant, and that's what it was never like, I thought you were building to red herring me. I thought it's just what's so great about it is that I interpret it totally in a different way. You know what I mean? Just like I interpreted the lightning strikes cueing ghosts and stuff. You know what I mean? Like
No, I mean, but that's one of those things where you can just get lucky, because it could land on the opposite side where you're just oh, we put this thing out here. Everybody thinks it means this one thing, and we didn't even consider that. And you know, if the coin, you know, falls the other way, it can be bad. So like, I'm just glad that it ended up walking that line, you know, to feel legit in that way, you know.
So Gone Home comes out.
Yep.
You take a deep sigh, I imagine, putting it out.
Mm-hmm.
But then, what's it like in the house / office as everyone starts to lose their mind for this? Is it a slow build? Because like I was turned on to it after reviews posted. So I mean, is it like a trickle of a few weeks of it just getting to be bigger and bigger?
It was a really big launch day.
Yeah.
Because it was like a crazy launch day. Because it was like we started seeing the reviews.
Yeah.
You know, because we had sent out review code far enough ahead of time. We requested an embargo time so they would all go up after the game was available on Steam, etc. And so reviews started going up, you know, in quick succession over the course of that day. And it was like, we finished the game internally. We all played through the game, you know, and we all, you know, having said this is content locked, this is what's going out. We should just play through it because this is what people are going to be playing.
Yeah.
We're all kind of like, we think this is good. Like we think if we played this, we would like it.
Sure.
We think we did a good job. Cool. So I think that we'll have, some people that really like it and it'll be their jam. And so hopefully that means the game will do well. You know what I mean? And I was not expecting the first review that we saw get posted to be a 10 out of 10. I wasn't expecting for there to be like a 9.5 from IGN, and a 9 from GameSpot, and
Sure.
on and on, right? It's like, okay, we thought we did a good job, but the degree to which this is connecting with people, and they're like, this is a 9.5, this is a 10 out of 10, was like, it was sort of like that. We thought people would like it. We did not see that coming, and it really did kind of snowball to like, whoa, this game. I think that the public perception was like, whoa, this game is like getting all of these like really high reviews compared to it's just like a small $20 PC only game. I should check it out. And then the thing that happened over the course of weeks was that it didn't go away. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because there were the reviews, and then there were just weeks of like essays and like think pieces and long form, in interpretive kind of writing on it of like people talking like Rock Paper Shotgun talking about the Alec from Rock Paper Shotgun identifying with like the dad of the in the game, or like people writing long form kind of like confessional stuff about how they saw themselves in the game, and this is what they remember from when they went through this, or Austin Walker doing a really good blog post about how he finished the game and he felt like there was still something in it. Then he went back and really dug out Uncle Oscar's story and put all those pieces together. And so there was the first, spike of like, wow, this is really critically well regarded to a degree we weren't expecting, followed by, and people are just like continuing to talk about it and play it. And there's a discussion that is just like going
bigger
from
than
that
games,
point forward. You know what I mean? So it's all you can really ask for as far as like the reaction to a game, to be like, we made it on our own terms. It was really well reviewed. People are buying it, and people are just like continuing to talk about it. People care about it. You know what I mean? Like that's I think you pour however much of your life into making something. All you can ask for is for people to care about it. And because there's so much stuff that people like work and they put it out, and nobody
ever pays
really
attention. Could come or go.
And so just knowing that we had made this thing that we thought we were proud of, and then that people really could see themselves in it and could really feel like it was worth expending their time and energy and thought talking about what that was and what it meant to them. That was really surprising and really, really gratifying.
So we've built you up here. This game's amazing. Everybody's awesome. We love you. There's think pieces. Everything's fantastic. All that said, games. All that said, do you take it hard or as an insult when people are like, "This isn't a game. It's a walking simulator. This isn't a video game. This shouldn't be game of the year. There's no gameplay."
No. I mean, no. Like as far as like taking it personally or something, no. No. I mean, I have always felt confident in what is like interactively valuable about the game, and it's backlash, right? Where it's like, I think that the flip side of a game that is non-traditional and small and doesn't have a lot of the things that a lot of games traditionally have, being very well received and kind of like propped up and made like this paragon of like, look at this game, is really, really good. People that don't connect with it don't just say, well, that's not really for me. They're also like, and here's why all these people that are saying this is really good are wrong, because it's not even a game, or whatever. And and I think that's just really an expression of just like, this isn't something that resonates with me.
Sure, it's not for everybody, right?
And like I don't see the personal value in expressing this isn't something that I care about in like really negative terms. You know, I like there's a lot of things that aren't for me and that I'm just not the audience for.
But you
and-
understand you have Twitter. You can just say that. You can just find stuff you don't like and tell people all the time.
Yeah, tell the people who made it.
Yeah, exactly. Go right to them. Go to the source.
Yeah,
Why'd you even do this? I don't enjoy it.
So, you know, I think that it's shorthand for this isn't the kind of experience that I care about. And, you know, like there's a whole wide world of different kinds of things that I think count as games, you know, or that are exploring different aspects of what being a game means or what an experience being interactive means or why you should even bother like playing a role in this experience instead of just watching it or you know whatever. And I think if we are able to help expand the territory of what is inside that realm of like, and here's something else that you can do with games, then it's worth the flip side of people saying like, well, that doesn't fit inside of my definition of game, so it's not even a game. You know, like, so it goes, right?
Yeah, exactly. Sweet and sour.
No, that's just a delicious sauce.
Well, I'm just saying, you gotta take the sweet with the sour.
Yeah, you don't just want.
You get so much praise. You're gonna be people. who like
and you just don't want sour sauce.
No, you don't.
I'll take my my chicken rice with just a bunch of sour.
Just put all the sour on there.
Can I get
sour fan?
Anyway, yeah.
For the record, too, I told you he would destroy a toy for your approval. You've moved to this stage. You've impressed him so much that Portillo is destroying.
Look at what you're doing. Oh my God, you're powerful.
So Gone Home comes out.
Yeah.
All these awards, all this stuff starts happening. 10s, all these 9s. Are your phones immediately blowing up? Is this everyone in the industry now wanting you to make them a game to work with you kind of thing?
I think I think the stuff that we heard the most was like just players emailing us and saying like, and kind of sharing their personal experience with the game. Like a lot of we were very fortunate for a lot of people to write to us and just be like, I played this game and it reminded me of when I was growing up, or I played this game and it reminded me of what my sister went through in high school, and I feel like I understand that better now in a way, or you know, like whatever, that kind of thing. Here's what the game meant to me. Thank you for making it. And that was the stuff that was like hard to keep up with because like in that initial push, it was just like so many people were sharing their connection with the game with us, and that was really cool. I think that as far as like other stuff like that goes, I was lucky to get invited to like speak at a lot of conferences and stuff. We started working on patching the game to fix some stuff, and we also added the commentary mode to it. So like we kept busy, kind of. You know, we recorded our own commentary tracks, and we also got commentary from Chris Remo, who did the music, and the Sarah Grayson, who did the voice of Sam, and Corin Tucker, who's the singer of Heavens to Betsy, which music is in the game, and later was the singer of Slater-Kinney. And so we were kind of like, you know, being like, how can we add to the game, make it better, fix some stuff, etc. And yeah, then, you know, did some traveling. We were able to actually afford to like have our own places of residence instead of all sharing one.
We're looking forward to that one day.
Yeah, someday. Enjoy it while you can. It's good while it lasts.
Yeah.
So you know, there were things to distract us during the like the kind of, because you finish a game and you've had something to work on every day for however long. And then you don't anymore. And it's a weird like,
I feel like I should be doing something.
Yeah, it's just a strange like adjustment period. Like, I mean, think if you finished Kind of Funny. If tomorrow it was like, okay, we shipped it, we're done.
No more
we don't
Colin
have to record any more stuff. Like tomorrow you'd probably be psyched because you get a day off. A couple days later you'd probably be like, so what am I supposed to be doing?
What do I do with this time now?
You know? So it's good to be able to say like, okay, well I gotta write a talk, I gotta go to this place, you know, we gotta get this patch together, et cetera, et cetera. And then, you know, after all that dust settled, took a little bit more of a break, and then it was kind of like, well, what are we gonna do now? How do we start making something that builds on what we've done, but that we don't just repeat ourselves? You know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's Tacoma.
It is.
Gone Home in Space.
Yes.
There you go. That's all I need, a summation of it.
What is a space station if not a space house?
I'm very excited to see if when I go into the space station and I open the drawers, if I'm like, this is like my space station. I remember growing up in this space station.
Floating upside down, looking at the moon, obviously. So hashtag relatable.
So I know we've gone incredibly long here. What time do you have on your watch there? You have a pretty watch. I don't want to pull out my phone. That's rude.
It is 4:16 p.m.
Oh shit, we got to because I want to do this. We're going to talk Tacoma on the Kind of Funny Gamescast.
But we're going to do it on the Gamescast.
We got to get moving if we're going to do a Gamescast.
All right.
So Tacoma, check out the Kind of Funny Gamescast because I want to know, like I was talking about, how the deal with Microsoft comes together. Not financials of it, but like, do they approach you? Do you approach them?
Yeah.
How does that kind of thing work?
Well, I'll show you the balance sheet.
Oh, thank you very much.
We kept receipts.
So the final thing for the Gone Homecast, I guess, then, is it's finally coming to consoles.
Yep.
Took you long enough.
Yep.
I've been beating down your door for years. When
I
did
know.
Gone Home come out anymore? I don't even remember the original year anymore.
August 2013.
Jesus Christ, Steve.
Yep.
It's almost 3 years later.
Yeah, well, not almost 3 years.
2.5 years later.
Yeah, yes. That is true.
August isn't that far.
It better
7
be.
months.
We got another game to make.
I'm going to E3.
I need as much time between now and August as I can get. No, it's been a while. We took some time off.
Yeah.
Started working with a publisher. Got things a ways with them.
Yeah.
I think some internal structure kind of stuff. There's
Sure.
some shuffling behind the scenes there. The game was, the development of the port was on hiatus for a while, and that was cool because we were focusing on getting Tacoma off the ground.
Yeah.
And then there became a point where it made sense for us to pick development of the console versions back up. So late last year, we picked it back up and we took the port in-house and we built the console versions of Gone Home, at the office, make it the thing that we want it to be. Add some Chivas, add some Trofilos.
But
no
not Platinum
trophy.
This is the one thing on the
Why
call.
do you like them?
Because it's awesome. Platinum trophies. Well, trophies are great, but platinum here's the problem. You shot yourself in the foot on this one. Platinum trophies signify real game.
Well, we know that it's
You're just a walking simulator. I don't
it's
know
not
what
a
to do.
game, so
Jesus.
you answered your own question.
And also, it would have been an
Miller.
easy platinum. I love an easy platinum. I would have been in and out in like 4 hours. I had the platinum. I'd be like, da da da.
No, it's like
one of my favorite games of all time. I'd have a platinum trophy in it. Now I'm gonna have what? Are you doing one of these things where it's a bunch of silvers and bronzes and I get 1 gold for beating it?
There's a few golds.
Okay, they're better.
You got a handful of golds.
Okay.
You got a handful of gold doubloons.
Okay. Well, no, they're
Gone Home.
You know
4.
nothing of the PlayStation.
Gold.
You can tell you tested
coins.
games before trophies existed.
They will mail you gold coins in the mail
Scott Rohde himself will
if
mail
you play
gold
your
coins.
PlayStation enough. Mm-hmm. It's not true.
No, not at all. Trust me, they know. My audience knows what happens to PlayStation games. I'll let it slide.
So yeah, thank you.
No problem.
I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
But yeah, no, it's on its way. So we're really glad to finally be able to do it because we're really fortunate that people are still talking about the game.
Yeah, brand new audience too. I think.
Yeah.
I don't know what your expectations are, but I expect this to do really, really well.
Good.
Just based on the fact of I think people love it.
That's good to hear.
No problem.
I mean, I think I think and hope is the kind of thing
Yeah.
where if you haven't played it yet because you're not a PC gamer,
Yeah.
maybe you have a friend who has told you like, oh, you should play that, and you're like, well, I don't play PC games.
Yeah. Now you got no excuse.
Now you get a chance, right?
Yeah.
Or if you're somebody who played it on PC 2+ years ago,
Yeah.
you're into playing stuff on your console now. Hopefully, might be a good excuse to do that, replay that you talked about. So it's not the kind of thing where we, the game has been out for a long time, right?
Yeah.
Like it's a known thing. But I hope that if it's able to expand the audience and basically just give more people a chance to play it, then that'll be really cool. I'm looking forward to more people being able to have the experience.
Me too. I'm looking forward to talking about more about Gone Home because I love talking about Gone Home. And so it's been.
I mean,
these
as
are
evidenced
skills I've
by,
let
the,
chill
by the
out.
length of this.
This 2-hour one-on-one Gone
Dude,
Home cast.
I make long podcasts. I don't want to mention any
I don't
other
think
outlets.
It's right there.
I don't want to mention any other outlets that you might have used to have worked at.
IGN.
But yesterday,
Yeah.
I was at IGN, and I think I somehow caused both of the IGN podcasts I was on to be like the longest of those episodes that they've ever
Well, that's the thing
recorded.
of and that's just the best thing about Kind of Funny is similar to what you're talking about with why you left Irrational and went and did small team stuff. Is we loved IGN. We don't get me wrong, but I do love the ability to sit down and do this because this is the Up at Noon interviews on steroids where it's okay, one-on-one, great, and let's actually have a conversation. I want to know and the views this video will do will be nothing remotely compared to what
Yeah.
even the short up at noon interview we did, right? But
right.
because it's like some people are like a 2-hour podcast,
Right.
see ya, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
Whereas others are like, that's what I want, that's what I want.
You got
And
2
that's-
hours
we
to
get-
kill.
We
You
get
gotta
to go make
commute.
that. Yeah. What are you doing? You waiting at the DMV right now? You driving your van full of nuns? What's up?
Are you in line at a drive-through right now? Are you waiting to get some chicken nuggets right now?
A lot of
are you
people
gonna
listen
get
to us
the-
while they work out, which is always.
Are you
weird
getting
thing.
ripped right now? Are you making gains right now? Are you buff right now?
You can tell we don't work out. I don't think.
Are you
no
the-
one says I'm going to. I'm getting ripped right now.
Are
And
you
what they say it, but they don't mean it that they're at the gym.
a listener? Are you smoking a bong right now?
There you go. That's better. Are you doing a weed right
I'm
now?
just
Listen-
trying to find
Slash viewer.
I'm just trying to find as many people as I can to make them
Oh.
feel weird because are you
Oh.
walking your dog right now?
The one-
Are you on your way to the bank right now?
Excuse
Are
me, sir.
you-
Are you currently listening to us while you put values into an Excel spreadsheet at a job you don't like that much? There you go. That's the real one.
all right.
That's the real one. That's the one a lot of people fall into. Hey, Nick.
Put it in cell C1. All right. So we're talking about cell C1. I think that means we're
No,
done.
yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, Gone Home Console Edition is out Tuesday, January 12th on PlayStation 4, Wednesday, January 13th on Xbox One. This is Steve Gaynor. He made it all by himself. No,
And
he made
the
a
very talented
whole bunch
team
of
at the
amazing
Fullbright
people at
Company.
Fullbright today. Thank you as always for coming by.
Absolutely.
I love
It
you.
was-
You're
it was
great
really
too.
great
So-
seeing the new spot.
Oh,
Thanks for having me
please, it's a
over,
pleasure.
man.
No, anytime. Ladies and gentlemen, until next time, it's been our pleasure to serve you.